Ho, 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 hello, everyone, and welcome to the Oscars podcast, Picture This, where we go through every single nominee in Oscars history. Today, we are talking about 1960. I'm here with my co-host, Chad Webb, in a very holly jolly episode. A few of these movies have some Christmas tinges to it. How you doing, Chad? Welcome. Happy Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Yeah, I'm doing great. Excited to talk about these movies. There seems to be like a lot of similarities between a lot of these.
Hmm.
It's a little bit of like 1960 coming in. Things are getting a little bit more edgy, a little bit more, you know, risque, I guess. And I'm
Yeah.
just like, wow, okay, 1960. All right, let's go.
Yeah. Great year in cinema. We'll talk about whether or not it's a great year for Oscar cinema because there's so many films that didn't get nominated that we'll talk about as well. But yeah, overall, there's a film in the slate that I very much adore. One that was also a very, nostalgic childhood favorite. And then three I had never seen before. So it's going to be very exciting to talk about these films considering both of us have so many blind spots here. And those are sometimes the most fun episodes because I don't really know many of your opinions going in except for one movie, obviously, and the same vice versa. So it'll be really interesting. Did you like this slate in general overall? Did you enjoy it?
Mostly, yes. I do agree. I think there is one that is at the very least like a clear, like beloved movie, like one that people actually talk about, and the rest not as much.
Right.
Um, and then there's a couple other ones that I think are like worthy, like movies that like I'm like, okay, I can see why those were nominated. Maybe there's some other ones from 1960 that could have replaced them, but I can see why, especially at that time, that
Hmm.
those were on the slate. And then there's two that I'm like, one's okay and one I just think is bad, and
Okay.
so I'm just like, maybe not those, but I
Right.
can also see why maybe around those time they were like that movie. I'm like,
Right.
no.
Yeah. Well, I'm very interested to know what you're talking about, what you're thinking about, because
Right.
sometimes we are very different. Sometimes we agree. My number one for '99 was Chad's number five. Chad's number one for 2020 was my number eight. So sometimes we disagree. 1961 also a one where we differed a lot on West Side Story. So I'm very interested to see where we line up in these films. What those films are, just to let you all know. John Wayne's The Alamo, The Apartment, Elmer Gantry, Sons and Lovers, and the Sundowners. So those are the titles. If you haven't watched them, go watch them. Spend a day, watch them, and then come back. And if you haven't seen them, maybe we'll entice you to check them out. But before we get into the movies themselves, we always like to talk about some of the history of the year itself. So, Chad, take us into the history of 1960.
Absolutely. Just a little bit here for 1960. It's known as the Year of Africa.
Mm,
17 African nations declared independence. There you go.
nice.
Greensboro sit-ins, which are protests at segregated lunch count at a segregated lunch counter. The first CERN, CERN particle accelerator becomes operational. France tests its first atomic bomb. The iconic photo of Che Guevara is taken. Women in Switzerland get the right to vote. The
Woo.
U.S. launches the first weather satellite. New Zealand's first television station begins broadcasting. Oh, and the Beatles formed. That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah,
Muhammad Ali wins gold at the Summer Olympics. First regular season game in the American Football League happens.
that's right.
Nigeria becomes independent from the UK. I guess that's just one of the African nations.
Yeah.
Eisenhower authorizes $1 million in aid to Cuban refugees. JFK first suggests the idea for the Peace Corps, and JFK beats Richard Nixon, becoming the second youngest man to become president of that day.
Wow. Yeah, very monumental year for 1960 there. We love those decade, offense numbers. We talked about 1980 on this. We talked about 1990. We talked about 2020. Like, it's really interesting to like cover the years where it's like in a transitionary period, both politically and cinematically. Um, I almost forgot what the word for cinematically was, but it is cinematically. But there are also every year there's always some births, some deaths. Obviously, that's how the human race works. But what are some
Yep.
notable births and deaths of that year, Chad?
Yep. Human and animal alike.
Oh,
Life and death,
yes.
which some
Oh,
of these
true. Yes.
films explore. Maybe
Always
not
life.
these ones, but other ones. Anyways, births. Michael Stipe, REM, Oliver Platt, Mark Rylance, Grant Morrison, Jonathan Larson, Rent, James
Mhm.
Spader, Nina, I think that's 99 Luftballoons, Brenda Strong, Hugo Weaving, Brad Garrett, Stephen Daldry, Bono, you two, Tony Goldwyn, Jeffrey Dahmer, Doug Jones, Chris Elliott, Thomas Hayden Church, Aaron Brockovich, John Elway, John Leguizamo, Richard Linklater, Chuck D, David Duchovny, Antonio Banderas, Sean Penn, Cal Ripken Jr., Damon Wayans, Hugh Grant, Colin Firth, Scott Baio, B.D. Wong, Tim Cook, Tilda Swinton, Neil Gaiman, Stanley Tucci, RuPaul, Amanda Wyss, Daryl Hannah, Julianne Moore, and Kenneth Branagh.
Wow, a
That's
lot
for
of Oscars.
births.
Yeah. And how
Yeah.
about some deaths?
Yep. And Aaron Brockovich, who will be covering her movie one day.
Yeah. Yes, we will.
Deaths, not as many that I could note. Diana Barrymore of the Barrymore clan, John D. Rockefeller Jr., Frank Lloyd, Fred Clark, Alfred E. Green, and Edwin Justice Mayer.
All right.
Meyer, like
And
the Goldwyn Mayer, whatever.
yes,
Yeah.
MGM. There's also you mentioned the Beatles as a big musical element of the 1960s or of 1960. What are some famous albums that maybe came out in 1960 that you want to highlight?
Yep. There's a few. None that I have, but one at least one that I do want. Giant Steps by John Coltrane. Sketches of Spain by Miles Davis. At Last by Etta James. That's the one that I
Mm,
want.
yeah, that's
Blues
me.
and Roots by Charles Mingus. Elvis is Back by Elvis Presley. Joan Baez by Joan Baez. We Insist Max Roach's Freedom Now Suite by Max Roach. Soul Station by Hank Mobley, At Newport 1960 by Muddy Waters, and The Incredible Jazz Guitar of Wes Montgomery by, can you guess? Wes
Wes
Montgomery.
Montgomery. Nice. Yeah, so we love to hear about all that. And now let's transition into the actual movies themselves. Before the Oscar morning, the announcements were made. People probably thought a lot of films were getting nominated, and they didn't end up getting nominated for Best Picture. So we're gonna highlight some films that didn't get nominated for Best Picture. The biggest one, I think, being Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho. That is like the one
Yeah.
where everyone's like, "How did that not get nominated?" And then, of course, Stanley Kubrick's Spartacus, which is one of the biggest like sword and sandal films ever made. So those two films in particular, you see it a lot in the other nominations, but not as much Best Picture. So those are like the two big ones. I have other ones on my list, but I want to ask you, Chad, did you have any notable films of 1960?
Yeah, and a few. And there's a lot that I noticed that I probably should have seen. So I'm sure some of my notables might end up in Best Picture territory once I see them.
Right.
But the only one that I have in Best Picture currently is Psycho,
Okay.
because I do think that's a masterpiece.
Hmm.
Notable films: La Ventura,
Hmm.
Eyes Without a Face,
Yeah.
Breathless,
Yeah.
Peeping Tom,
Huh.
13 Ghosts, The Entertainer, The Little Shop of Horrors, Spartacus, Cinderfella, Village of the Damned, and Swiss Family Robinson.
Yeah, there you go. I also had a Little Shop of Horrors on my list. The original, The Little Shop of Horrors, the one that the musical was based on, that the movie was based on, and another one that had a remake that was much more acclaimed. It was Ocean's 11. The original Ocean's 11 was this year. Very bad film, but they remade it, and it was a pretty good film. I'm still not in love with the remake, but it's much better than the original. And The Magnificent Seven was also 1960, which has also had. It is a remake, and it has been remade. It's a remake of Seven Samurai, and it has been remade with, I believe, it was Denzel and Chris Pratt and a bunch of other actors
Mhm.
just a few years ago. So, yeah, you mentioned,
And then and
yeah,
then you have the Ridiculous Six from Adam
right,
Sandler. But we
right.
don't talk
Um,
about that one.
no, I haven't seen that one, so I guess that's for the better.
It's
But
all
yeah,
right. It's
you
just
mentioned, yeah,
dumb.
Breathless, Eyes Without Face, La Dolce Vita is another one I had on my list. Bells are ringing. I mean, not you know the most stacked year, but I mean a lot of great films that weren't nominated. And like I like this slate. I think it's good. I think there's one that I love, obviously, and then like some that I'm like, they're good, but there's like something holding me back from saying they're great, but they're also good. They're
Mhm.
not bad. And then one that I just don't care for at all. But I think just looking at this honorable mentions, I think you could have maybe swapped out 2 to 4 of these nominees with some of those other ones. Definitely Psycho at least, and Breathless and Spartacus at least, and then Magnificent Seven I'd probably throw in there too. But I'm not the Academy. We're just two guys living way longer, way past 1960, who can merely just reflect on it now. The actual Oscars, though, there's really nothing to note about the ceremony much. This was the first ceremony with a red carpet, so that's something we kind of like associate with the Oscars. So it's pretty cool. The first red carpet was in 1960. Another big piece of history is that this is the last time a black and white film won Best Picture until Schindler's List. So it went from 1960 to 93 with no black and white winner. And then again, it wouldn't happen for another few years till The Artist in 2011. So there have only been two black
Wow.
and white films to win since The Apartment. Perhaps we may see one that is half black and white win this year. Who knows? There's always some black and white films that come out every year that are pretty good, but Oppenheimer may take that title. We don't know. But then again, it's not totally black and white either, so it doesn't really count. But neither is Schindler's List. So there we go. That is the introduction of the Oscars. Oh, I have to pull up our chart, of course, to see what was the front runner going in. It was The Apartment. The Apartment won the Golden Globe for comedy or musical. It won the BAFTA, so there really was no, kind of suspense going into the night. There was no other film that people thought was going to win. So The Apartment pretty much got that pretty handily. So, all right. Let's get into this. Before we can get to The Apartment, though, we got to go to some other location. We got to go to San Antonio, Texas, to talk about the Alamo. Chad, tell us about the Alamo.
Yeah, The Alamo, directed by John Wayne, written by James Edward Grant, cinematography by William H. Clothier, music by Dmitri Tiomkin, starring John Wayne, Richard Widmark, Lawrence Harvey, Richard Boone, Frankie Avalon, other people. Synopsis: A group of, I think this is it. A group of Southern Americans attempt to defend the Alamo from invading Mexican troops or
Yes.
forces, I guess.
Yep. So this is a historical biopic, but it is also kind of a semi-western, just due to the location and where it's taking place. I This was one of the ones I had seen before. This is a movie I grew up watching a lot as a kid, and one I did watch the remake a lot more. The Billy Bob Thornton, Dennis Quaid one from I think 2004. Just probably because it was a little more action centric, because it was a little bit more about the war and the fighting. And at that time, when you're a 6 year old, you're more into the it's the same decade as like Pirates of the Caribbean, Lord of the Rings. Like you're into more of the battle stuff, less about the political stuff and the kind of underdog David versus Goliath story. You're more just into, oh, look at all this fighting and stuff. But I think now being older, I might prefer this one to the remake just because it's a little bit more ingrained in the character and in the political stuff and in the you know all the other reasons for war rather than the fighting itself, which is an interesting outlook because the battle we don't really see until the last 40 minutes. The actual battle of the Alamo, which people tend to remember a lot of these movies for, is the battles, but there's so much that comes before it. Chad, this was a first watch for you, right?
Yes. Yep.
Cool. What are your thoughts on the Alamo?
Um, I think this is a pretty terrible movie. I do not like this one at all.
Oh
Yeah,
my.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Wow.
So we
All
we
right.
are differing right off the gate. I
I'm
think this
shocked.
is
Okay.
I think this is pretty bad.
Okay. Yeah. Tell me.
Right
I'd love
off the
to.
gate, I knew that I was probably not going to like it when I saw an image of John Wayne wearing a dead animal on his head. I was
Okay.
like, I'm not gonna like this.
Gotcha. Okay, so did you do a lot of like any like in grade school or elementary, high schools, like any study on like the Alamo and stuff, Davy Crockett and stuff?
I don't know too much about it. Like if
Gotcha.
I did learn that stuff in school, but I just don't
Right.
remember a lot about the actual event.
Yeah, because
And
the
I
the
wanted to.
coonskin cap is like his like yeah, that's what David Crockett wore. So it's not like a John Wayne saying, "Oh, I'm gonna do this dead animal thing." It's more so just like the historical, accuracy context. But
I understand that, but it
no,
still
I
makes
know
me
it's still
angry,
not
and I
pleasant. No, I
just
know. I agree. I agree. I agree.
and
Yeah.
it's one of those things to where like if I'm watching your movie and that you want me to like this movie and you're doing that, I'm like, no,
Right.
I'm.
Yeah.
It's pretty awful. I think that part specifically. But yeah, no, I'm also just I guess not really interested in this. I don't um I don't know. I just don't really find like defending this land that you kind of took from other people, and I think it gets a little wishy-washy with the politics there. I also
Hmm.
just think it's very dull for the most part.
Interesting.
I couldn't really like I didn't like any of the characters. Nothing really hooked me.
Okay.
It's like 3 hours long, and nothing really happens until the end, like you said. I mean, I did maybe character building and stuff, but it's like I don't really think they did a good job at that.
Hmm.
Um, and it just meanders for 3 hours. So this is one that I don't know, maybe could have been. I know they wanted to do like more of like a war epic kind of a deal, but I just don't think. I also think like I saw it and I was like, when as soon as after the movie, I was looking up the stuff and I was like, oh, John Wayne directed this. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And I was
Well,
like,
yeah. I
I
think
don't,
that's where a lot of my adoration for it comes from because yeah, like I get actually narratively, like politically, obviously this is such a different time and it's hard to look at it with a modern lens and not have certain views on that stuff, and I agree with that stuff. But I think if you just look at it as like a Western actor who is probably the most iconic Western actor of the time, wanting to make a film. He only made 5 films, and this was like his passion project. He actually spent, I think, a little over a decade trying to get it made because it was one of the most expensive films ever made. So he had to like literally a lot of like Texans were like helping fund this project. So I think from that element, like yes, political stuff, there's some stuff that is, controversial in it, but I think just the idea of all these like just regular people coming together to like fund a film because they are proud of where they are and their people. And this film is very much the David versus Goliath story. It's this army basically saying, you know what, we'll just surrender this area, but other people are like, this is our home, like we're gonna stay here even though we know it's a battle we're gonna lose, we're gonna fight it. And it's 13, I think it's like 13 people, yeah, or no, it's a 13-day siege, it's like 100 and something people, but they know they're gonna lose, but it's the idea that they're gonna stand there because they stand for something and they're gonna fight regardless, or at least try to defend it because it's what they stand for. And I like that idea of like the way the movie was made was kind of like that too. It was a movie that John Wayne was told he couldn't make because it was too expensive. He probably didn't have the directing chops to make it, but he still wanted to make it because he was passionate about the story, and he was able to gather all the funding. And like, it's a real underdog story in that way. And I get it. Like, it's not everyone's cup of tea, but maybe I'm a little defensive because I grew up watching this, and this was like a childhood favorite of mine. So
nostalgia
maybe
pick. Yeah.
there's that nostalgia to it. Yeah, because I was just so interested in that history too because of the idea of like, wait, they just literally just left them out there to die, and then like they just had to defend it against all that army and stuff. And at the time as a kid, I didn't necessarily understand all the ins and outs about like whose land was it first, whose land was this that. But it really showed, I think, a negligence of the Texas government in general to just be like, you know, you people are expendable to us. You can fight or whatever. But we're not gonna, we're not gonna bother. And I think that reflects badly on the Texas government. So I think there is kind of a, you know, counter where yeah, the Mexican army doesn't look good, but neither does the Texas army. It's more so these guys in the middle who are, don't really know what to do, but all they know is that they love their families and they want to protect their families.
I don't know. I guess maybe I just don't like the characters in the movie. Like, I think that, like I can totally see it from your perspective where you're like, they're underdogs, they're defending their territory. It's all they know kind of a deal. But like, on the other hand, I'm like, it's a bunch of people that are in over their heads and doing something that they probably shouldn't be doing. It's like, just move, or something like
Right.
that. Like you're not going to go up against an army. That's ridiculous. And
Right. Yeah, it is. It
I don't
is
know.
ridiculous. Yeah, but it's. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
So I guess maybe because I don't have the nostalgia, because the movie just bored me out of my mind, and I was
Mhm.
just like, I wanted to be wrong because I was going into it with a, oh no, here we go, wearing a dead animal on your head for most of the movie, and it wasn't most of the movie, but all those scenes, I was like, oh no, and then everything else with it, I just like nothing really br- brought me. There was no like relationship that brought me into it. There was nothing to really cling on to, and I didn't even find any of the battles that particularly interesting either. So, and I'm not really like a war big epic kind of movie guy
Right.
anyways. So I
Well,
think for
that's why I
me
think
it
it's so
takes.
refreshing though, because it's not
Mhm,
all that. It's not until the last 40 minutes. It's all about these complex conversations because they have all those conversations too. It's like, what are we fighting for? Like, is this right? Is
mhm.
this wrong? And that's why I like it because it's a lot about the morality that builds up to it. It's not just all fighting. And I think that's something that the remake, even that I probably liked better as a kid, might not like as much as an adult because it is more
Mm,
glorifying the battle. Because I'm with you. I don't like a lot of historical epics and battle stuff and war stuff because I think it overuses the battle scenes as a way of entertainment that isn't necessarily spreading the right message, sending the right message, where I prefer something like this where it's a lot of the conversation. It's like the last season of Game of Thrones, how the best episode is them before the war when they're talking and they're just talking about what they're fighting for and who they love and why they're fighting and if they should fight in that dilemma more so than the actual night battle itself. It kind of reminds me of that a little bit. And yeah, it does go on a little long. It does drag a little, but I think we were talking a little bit before we recorded about like how um I obviously misinterpreted your comment because I thought you were talking about this movie where it's like the quality is clearly there. I think in this movie, even if the writing and the actual storytelling isn't necessarily an all-time high, the quality, I think, at least from a visual perspective, is really high in this. Like I think the sets look amazing, the costumes, like everything about it, the craft. I think that's just part of my admiration for it too. Is just John Wayne. Literally, this is a passion project, and he puts so much of his own money and time to get it started, and then it looks as magnificent as this. I think that's just impressive, just as a film nerd, just being like, wow, like this all like this it looks really good for 1960. Like the actual production value of the film is great. So I think a lot of my love for it also comes from the practicality of it as well, more so than just the story. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, you're definitely not wrong there. It's like, one of the I'm not gonna say that it was like it's shittily made or anything like
Hmm.
that. But I think, because I love the story of the characters or really much of like what they were talking about, personally, like I don't think like the the scope of it or the scale of it or, was enough to really bring me to wanna actually like the movie or, see the good in it. Even though I mean, there's some quality there,
Right.
not saying that. But even like when you talk about, All Quiet on the Western Front, we covered very recently,
Right.
um, that's another one where we're talking about how what it does better than the remake is that you have a lot more of the conversations.
Right.
So that's
Yeah.
what we're talking about here with the Alamo. I think the distinction here for me is that I cared more about what the people in All Quiet on the Western Front had to say
Right.
than anything in the Alamo. So yeah, maybe just a difference of opinion there. Maybe it's something I'll have to rewatch down the line and see if I, incorrectly assessed it. Maybe I don't know.
No, it's fair. And another thing I really enjoy, or not enjoy, I should say, because it's a pretty morbid thing to say you enjoy. But what is interesting about this film compared to a lot of other westerns of the time is that they lose, and I think that's a really big element too.
Mhm.
Is the fact that
The
at the end,
Rocky.
yeah, like Davy Crockett dies very unceremoniously too. Like you're like, oh shit, John Wayne just died. Oh, John Wayne died. Okay, cool. And then like Jim Bowie's death too. Like all these deaths that are just so kind of random and out of the blue. It's kind of like the Infinity War thing where at the end you're like, wait, everyone died. Okay, cool. Wait, wow, like that's so different. You don't expect that going in. And I think when you think like John Wayne's passion project Western epic, and then you see them all lose, it's like almost this kind of sadness at the end. Um, that is a little striking because it's unexpected, which I also appreciate because they could have changed a lot. And there are historical liberties obviously taken in this film, but I do think that is one historical liberty I'm glad they didn't take. I'm glad they didn't have them win. I'm glad there wasn't any sort of triumph at the end. I like how it doesn't have the traditional Hollywood epic hoorah ending, which is another reason why at the time when I was a kid, I had never seen anything like it before. I was like, wow, like I didn't expect them to all lose. And then the last shot of like you see Davy Crockett's like silhouette standing at the top of the Alamo, because that's another thing with the Alamo, just from studying it a lot, is like the idea of the myths and the idea of did Davy Crockett even fight there, or was he just a fiction fable thing? I mean, it is a little Jesus like. It's a little religious in that way, but like it's the idea of, oh, was he did he actually fight at the Alamo, or is this like a symbol for something else, for the everyman coming to fight for his country, you not needing to be, in the war to fight for something you love and to show your expression of freedom. But it's also like, yeah, like that kind of eeriness of him just standing at the last shot is him standing at the top of the Alamo, and it's like it's supposed to be like his ghost and his spirit. And I like that supernatural element of it too. The remake leans a little more into the supernatural of it all, which is cool too.
Mm.
But I don't know. I think it's because at the time when I saw it as a kid, it was just a little different than your typical war movie. It wasn't just like this is good, this is evil, they're gonna fight it out, hoorah, the good guys win. It was very different. They were outnumbered from the start. They knew they were gonna lose, and they did lose. And that to me was always just an interesting unconventional thing. I think having seen other war films since, this definitely is not as good as I thought it was. Like I'm not trying to say it's a great movie. It's not my number one, obviously, but um I just for all those reasons I definitely appreciate it. And just because of the production value and what John Wayne put into it and him wanting to basically take the step to being a director. I think for a I don't know if this is his first film. I don't think it is, but like for one of his only 5 directorial efforts, I think, this is clearly a labor of love regardless of the messaging, and that is what I appreciate about it.
Yeah, 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 for sure. And I just love the just love the fact that, like, right out of the gate, I'm like, "I hate this one," and then you're like
Right, and I never thought that would be the one. Now I'm curious, the one I hate, I'm curious to see what your defense of that
well, I think
is.
well, I think I know exactly which one you don't like now, because it's one I have a lot of problems with as well,
Okay.
unless I'm wrong. I
Yeah,
could be wrong.
and the difference
But
between this one, it's hard to foreshadow to talk about it without saying what it is, but the difference between this one and that one is like, yes, the storytelling here, there are definitely some flaws, especially given the datedness of its subjects, but I still think it's very competently made, which I think sets it above the other one because it's like it's
interesting.
clearly like this is a well-made film, I think, just artistically. If you're looking at it, I know there shouldn't be a binary, but if you're looking at it like story and presentation, I think the presentation is good. Like and yes, obviously the coonskin cap is not, favorable, but everything else about the costume set, everything like that, and the direction, the actual cinematography, I think is great. The music, I love that final ballad. That song I used to sing as a kid all the time too, because it's just such like an earworm. But
13 days of glory at the siege of Alamo.
yeah, like I think this at least nails the style, whereas the substance, it's up for debate, obviously.
Yeah.
But the other film, it's like I don't think it's well made, if that
We'll
makes sense.
get there.
But
And
yeah, we'll get
I do really like hearing your perspective, especially with just me just not randomly, we chose to do this year, but like me just seeing this because, I have to
you had
watch
to.
it for the
Yeah,
show.
right, right.
And then you being like, I chose to watch this as a child. And they'd be
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, cool. So like, I like hearing it from that perspective because it when you go into a movie and you kind of I'm not saying that I wanted to dislike the movie when I went into it, but I saw the still of him wearing the cap and I went, oh no, this isn't gonna be something I enjoy. At least part of it. And then when I was just going through it, just nothing hooked me.
Right. Yeah, that's
So
fair.
I'm just wondering if it will on a rewatch down the line or something like that. Maybe I'll do this and then watch the remake and
Yeah.
kind of compare and stuff like that. But
Well, and even as
and
kids,
think
like
about your perspective
yeah,
too.
and even as kids, I feel like sometimes kids fixate on one element of it. Like when I was a kid, I remember remembering the battles more so to where like when I was watching this, I was like, I don't remember a lot of like the first 2 hours of it. But I think, that's just something as well is like nostalgia. Kids, there's a reason some films are nostalgic, and it may not be for certain. It might just be for one scene or one sequence. Like maybe I watched the last 45 minutes of this over and over again. Maybe I didn't watch the whole thing. I don't know, but I just remember having a fondness for it. But yeah, I'm not saying it's a masterpiece by any means. It's not even in my top few films, but it is,
Yeah,
I think, well made, and I respect the craft of it a lot. So, but hey, it's divisive. That's like most
because
things on the show. So
I mean, you brought it up, and I do remember like in grade school, like hearing about the great Davy Crockett and stuff like, and people will kind of not put people on like a pedestal, but they'll like, teach about them, and then they'll be
mhm.
like, these are some like great like American heroes
Right, because
and
he
stuff
was
like that.
unique because he was just a frontiersman. He wasn't a fighter, and he just like joined anyway. Like I think it was kind of
Yeah,
symbolized the everyman type thing, but
gotcha, gotcha. And then Die Hard would do it a little bit better, just a little bit
right, right. I agree with that. I agree with that.
later.
Bring it back to the
but
Christmas theme of the episode. Yeah.
but yeah. I don't know. I'll watch it down the line. I don't like the people in the movie. It's just
No, you don't have to,
know.
and that's the thing. You don't
Yeah,
have to like it. Like you don't even have to say I'll give it another shot because sometimes I'll be honest. Most movies I don't like, I don't want to give another shot. There are some though that
yeah,
I'm like I can see brilliant pieces here to where I want to give it another shot. But like I
yeah.
understand, like if you're just like, yeah, no, I don't like it, I don't want to see it again. But I would maybe check out the remake just because it is a little different, and maybe see if that paints in a different view. The raccoon cap is not as animalish. It is a little bit more just like the pattern rather than the like full like hands and feet and
Right.
stuff.
Oh, I've seen the remake,
Oh, you have
but
seen
a
the remake?
long time
Oh,
ago. I
okay.
don't remember much about it. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay, gotcha. Well, the Alamo didn't win much, but it was nominated for 7 awards. It won for Best Sound, but it was nominated for 6 others: Best Picture, Best Supporting Actor for Chill Wills, Best Score, Best Song for The Green Leaves of Summer, amazing song, Cinematography, Color, and Film Editing. Remember back then they had cinematography in color and cinematography in black and white. But next we have, oh, he's putting on his jacket. Um,
Forgot about it.
it's okay. I thought that was like an anti-Alamo thing. Like I'm not wearing the suit jacket for the Alamo. No.
No.
It's okay. I would have been fine if you did in protest, but I don't know if we'll have to protest this one very much. Let's talk about the winner of the Best Picture of 1960. It is The Apartment. A lot of locations in this.
The Apartment, directed by Billy Wilder, written by Billy Wilder and IAL Diamond, cinematography by Joseph Lachelle, music by Adolf Deutsch, starring, that's a very German name, by the way, starring Jack Lemmon, Shirley MacLaine, Fred McMurray, Ray Walston, Jack Crucian, David Lewis, and Edie Adams. Synopsis: an insurance clerk is forced to lend his apartment to upper executives for sex while he hopes for a promotion, while a young woman is manipulated by an older man.
Yes. What a Christmas treat that synopsis indicates. No, and that's I think one of the coolest things because we both seen this film. We both, admittedly really like this film. But I think what's so interesting about this premise is you hear the premise and it's like this guy literally like rents out his apartment for sex and it's about seasonal depression. A woman tries to kill herself. Like you think Christmas and you're like, that's not holly and jolly and happy and bright. But I think what people don't understand is like this time of year is like the worst time of year. Like, yes, Christmas is meant to be about family and coming together and being happy and being celebratory, but like scientifically, seasonal depression, the fact that the sun is going down earlier in the day, the fact that it's cold, this is a time of family to where if you don't have family or if you're grieving a loss, like this is what's kind of prevalent on the front of your mind. Myself, I'm going through stuff this season, and I'm Christmas shopping has been hard for me this year, and just my job status and like what my deal is. I just hurt myself a few days ago with a serious injury, how that's affecting it. Sometimes the holidays can suck because they're supposed to be so cheery. There's like this kind of idea that you have to be happy, but sometimes life is shitty and life is tough, especially this time of year with seasonal depression. And I think that's what I appreciate so much about this film is that it kind of deals with the idea of some people are alone on this holiday. Some people don't have the people to surround themselves with. Some people are struggling to get through the holidays, but you can still find some way to connect with others and come together, ultimately ending in that more positive message, which I really appreciate because it kind of gets to the honesty of what I think the holiday season is. And it kind of gives it somewhere to grow to be that kind of holly jolly feeling we want to get on Christmas. Because Christmas always feels like the cathartic release of kind of bent up frustration of the holidays itself. It's why the Grinch works so successfully for people on Christmas because it's about this guy who has all this loathing and then eventually learns to kind of, grow a heart 3 sizes. So that's what I love about The Apartment first and foremost is the idea of it being set around Christmas. And that was what I wanted to say first and foremost, because so many people have said, is this Christmas adjacent? Is this actually Christmas? And I'm like, yes, it covers a lot of ground in terms of time and holidays. Like it's also a New Year's movie. It's also got some, end of November stuff going on. But I think the overall sentiment and what it has to say about people on the holidays and what it means, what Christmas truly means in terms of coming together and being there for one another and kind of like, getting through it with one another, I think is so important to where I couldn't imagine this being a film that takes place in the summer or in, the spring or whatever, because I think the atmosphere of winter is so vital for this film. But I'll let you talk because I just did a little passion rambling for a bit because I love this film. But Chad, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that? Because you didn't look very responsive to it. I just want to make sure you understand.
Well, I was just sometimes when you're talking, I'm just thinking about everything you're saying.
Okay.
So like I have the blank face.
No,
So sorry about that. Or maybe I'm glaring.
No,
like,
I didn't want you to think I was saying that Christmas is not a holly jolly time. It is.
No.
There's also another side to it that sometimes
Yeah.
movies in general like.
Well, I was thinking about that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I was thinking about everything you were saying, and I mean, it makes a lot of sense. It's one of the. I mean, I would call The Apartment more Christmas adjacent, but I also do understand and think that I mean, it does have that coming together feeling to it, but it also does have that kind of like dark side to it. This is a dark comedy.
Yeah.
The mirror, it's broken.
Yes, I know. I like it that way. Makes me look the way I feel.
Because you do have elements of suicide and, infidelity and, stuff like that. But it's also a very light comedy in a lot of ways. And it's one
there's
that,
so many great bits, so many funny bits.
yeah, it's very interesting. I'll get into that in a second because I do want to comment on, the season and stuff like that. Yeah. It is a shitty time for some people. It's also not a shitty time for others, and it sucks that some people do go through a lot. I mean, sometimes I have gone through stuff as well. And at the end of the year is kind of like a summation of
Right.
that year, but also like where you're at in life and things like that. You're about to start going, I need some New Year's resolutions. I need to change some things. So you put a lot of things into perspective, and it might not be a great picture at the end of the year for you, but then you can have some hope for a new start, for the next year. And like, what can I start doing now? I mean, you can start doing things anytime, but wrapping it up a year and then starting a new year is like, all right, I'm going to start doing this. And January 1st marks that. And I think Christmas is not something, and I'm not saying you said this at all, but I'm saying that Christmas is not, to me, like something that's saying, it's Christmas. You have to be happy. Why are you being sad? Come on. It's, but it's more like Christmas is, well, I mean, other than like the religious aspects of Christmas, but Christmas can be in like at least a secular kind of sense, a thing that happens to help people feel better. And like the cheery stuff. Like I know some people like roll their eyes at it and go like, oh, I'm not just going to be happy just because you have all the decorations and stuff. But I think it like makes it to where it's something special, something that we can look forward to. And like you said, bring people together and stuff like that. And there's a sense of hope with it.
Yeah, I want to comment on that because that's so interesting. Because you're like, there's some people who are so like almost anti-holidays because they're almost told to. Because I think a lot of the time, media and in general, like the overall like corporate side of things wants you to feel a certain way, and they kind of market Christmas as one singular individual thing. But I think that's what's so interesting about this movie is that's exactly what this character is going through. He's working in a corporate office where the only motive and the only idea is to move on up and to be in the best office and be the boss and have the best money and all that. But at the end of the day, he realizes it's not about that. It's trying,
but at what cost?
his life, yeah, exactly. His life is basically being sold as something that's not important. He's stooping so low as to say, I'm going to just sit out in the cold and get a literal cold, come into work nasally the next day, which is a great bit. But like also it's a sadness to it too, because it's like, I'm going to catch a cold because I'm so desperate to move up this corporate ladder. And I think it's a good mirror to the actual holidays and how like a lot of these big, like, it's covered in a lot of films. So the way toy companies are certain minded on what the holidays means to them. It's all about money and driving profits and this and that and this and that. And when really it's not. It's about humans and emotions. And I think that's one thing that this character arc resembles so well, is that Jack Lemmon's character is quite literally someone who is focused on the corporate side of things. It has to be this way, this way, this way, because this is what it is. This is my life. And then he learns to realize that he needs to kind of just enjoy the people he actually cares about and realize what is important in his life at that point in his life. And I love that. I love that in comparison to what we've talked about already about the holiday in itself. And that's why I think it makes even more of a case as to why I think it's an essential Christmas movie, or at least an essential like winter movie to watch this time of year, because it is all about what you said about reflection and kind of looking back and really just assessing where you're at, for multiple characters, not just Jack Lemmon's, but also Shirley MacLaine's, in the idea that she does decide I'm done, but then also kind of has that turnaround, that moment where she is at New Year's, and that's obviously not Christmas, but where she has a movie where she just runs out and runs down the streets. Very When Harry Met Sally, but I love it. Or Licorice Pizza, that famous like running down the street. I'm going to the one I really love. Screw this. I'm not going to be told what to feel and what to think. I'm going to feel how I want to feel and how to think, which I really like, which is beautiful. I love this movie.
Yeah. No, I mean that's exactly like a really good point, and it kind of like makes me think about like other movies too, like, It's a Wonderful Life and Die Hard.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
every single time we have these conversations about, is it a Christmas movie? Is it Christmas adjacent? Is it just flat out not a Christmas movie? We just have all these arguments, and it doesn't really matter. Like, you just whatever you like to watch around the Christmas season. But yeah, I do think The Apartment does have some of those themes that really can make you say, I think that is a legitimate Christmas movie and not just
Mhm.
Christmas adjacent. But talking about the actual film itself, because I haven't really done that much yet. Um, I I have seen this movie, I believe, twice now. And the
Okay.
first time, because I think the first time you watched it, you just fell in love immediately.
Yeah.
And for me, um, I liked it, but I didn't like fall in love with it necessarily immediately. But the second time I watched it, I was like, this is a great movie that I really love. And it's also interesting too because a lot of people who had just grown up with the movie, or just watched the movie a lot of times, were like, "This is a really great comedy." I watched it the first time, and then I was like, "This is barely a comedy. This is like a drama. What are you
Right.
guys talking about? There's like not much that's funny in the movie at all." And then watching it a second time, I was like, "I missed all these bits." There's like so
Yeah.
many good lines and just like
Right.
little things that happen that just like are just really funny. Like I feel like the one part where he's like dancing with the girl in the bar, and
Yes.
I don't remember every single line. I don't even know if I wrote them down.
Right.
Maybe I did. Hold on. Stuff just like little lines like that's the way it crumbles cookie wise. I just
Yeah,
love the
all
dialogue.
the whys, yeah, yeah. Oh, I love all those because he says lines like that so often where it's like this thing, this wise, like it just it gives it a personality. Like Billy Wilder just knows how to inject so much personality into his characters to where it's like he's not even like doing a comedic bit, but because these characters themselves are just very well-rounded characters, people in real life are funny. So like if you have these characters who feel like real people, they're gonna be funny once in a while. And I think that's what Billy Wilder gets so right. He doesn't go for the joke. He just writes these characters honestly, and because these characters are honest and open, they lend themselves to the comedy naturally, which I really like.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely found myself laughing at the movie, not at the movie, with the movie,
Right.
a lot more times the second time than I did the first time. And I think it also helped because I watched it with like we watched it as like part of the our like Thanksgiving thing. It's like the transition from Thanksgiving to
Right.
Christmas kind of a deal. And we watched it there with like my father-in-law and my mom and stuff like that. And we had a great time watching it, and I think it was their first time all watching it too. So it was like really funny to watch it. But
Nice.
yeah, I love the concept. I love how like frank it is about like talking about like sex and stuff, and the humor that comes from that, and also the problems that come with that, and how some some people like they can do like a one night stand type of thing, or cheat
Mhm.
on their wives and things like that and just think nothing of it. But like what happens if someone falls in love with you? How
Yeah.
like depressed could they get if they actually fall for you, and then you lead them on and you go, I'm going to leave my wife for you or something like that. And then what can happen if you don't. And
Mhm.
it's just causing a lot of different problems. But yeah, that there's that. I also love the whole arc of Jack Lemmon's character. I think that is brilliant. Like I even the first time I watched it, I loved that, where I was like, I love how the whole time he's one way, where he just wants to get bigger, and then he's like, trying on a new hat. Like, does this hat look good? And, I got an office now, kind of a deal. And then
Mhm.
it's like, well, none of that's really making him happy. He's kind of a poser because he
Right.
actually didn't earn his way there. He didn't,
Right.
and even the people that are there are kind of shitty people a lot of the
Right.
times. And you're
Yeah.
just like, okay. But I love the part where he's saying, I don't want this anymore, to Fred McMurray's character. And he's like, he gives him the key, and he thinks it's to the apartment again, and it's the key to the executive washroom. And then he's like, hey, you gave me the wrong key. It's like, no, I didn't. So kind of a deal. So
Yeah.
I always love that, like that kind of just a way of saying, I quit. I'm serious about it. bye.
Yeah, and even
So
he
yeah.
does it in a jokey way, like you were saying. Like
Yeah.
it's a serious, like there's serious stuff at play here, but like the little touches of comedy is I think what makes it so palatable. And yeah, like some of my favorite comedic bits, like the tennis racket to strain the spaghetti, just so
Yeah.
funny. It's just such a great visual thing. And then also the doctor who was actually nominated for the Oscar, but the idea of the idea that the doctor doesn't really see him, he just hears him and thinks he's this like sex devil who's having sex every single night.
Yeah.
Mildred, he's at it again.
And another thing that's not really comedy, but just the way it's kind of like the Chekhov's gun thing, where like something will happen in a movie that you don't think is important, then later it becomes a little more significant. I love how Billy Wilder does that stuff too, especially the broken mirror, for example. Like the reveal, though, when he sees the mirror and he knows exactly what that means. Billy Wilder does that so well too. Just like the visual storytelling of like recycling things from earlier on that you didn't necessarily think were important that come back to be important later on. Like the razor as well, like the fact that he takes the razor blades out because he's worried she's gonna hurt herself, and then later when he's
Mhm.
shaving he realizes, shit, why isn't it working? Oh, there's no razor blades. Things like that, which is just like something that goes beyond just like original like screenwriting and directing. You really have to be a master to get those little details right, because it's those little
Yeah.
details that I think fill in this world and make it so amazing, to where, like you said, you could watch it again and find more comedy from it the second time, or just find more from it in general, comedy or otherwise. um I think it really works funny wise. But
Love
yeah,
it.
like the idea of like kind of taking things from earlier and like having payoffs later that aren't necessarily huge payoffs. The shaving thing's not a big deal later when he's like, I can't shave, I don't have my razors. But it's a cute little nod that like just kind of keeps you in the universe, keeps you invested, and keeps you engrossed, which I think is really beautiful.
Yeah, and I think that's a big strength of the movie is we're talking about the great dialogue, because I think it has like
Yeah.
pretty perfect screenplay.
Hmm.
Um, and I just love certain lines, like you brought up the broken mirror, and it's just one where I think someone's like, you need to get a new mirror or something like that, and she's like, I like this one. It makes it reflects how I feel about myself or something like that. Whatever she says is better than whatever I just said, but
Right.
she
Yeah, it's hard to
basically
quote. It's hard
says,
to quote this movie because the dialogue is just so perfect and so uniquely Billy
mhm,
Wilder that you can't even do it justice by repeating it.
yeah, she basically says like the mirror's broken, kind of like I am, so I like it. It makes me feel, it's the same as me. There's another line that I wrote that was, I wonder how long it takes to get somebody you're stuck on out of your system.
Mm,
And so that's another great line. And then there's just like all of the wordplay that they do. And you just did one where it's funny wise. There's that
right.
one
Yeah.
time they said otherwise wise. And so I just
Right.
love like that. That's the kind of humor where it's just like play on words, puns, and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So yeah, this is just a pretty phenomenal screenplay and
Yeah. The
execution and all that.
tagline for the movie is, movie wise, there's never been anything like love wise, laugh wise, or otherwise. Yeah, it's so
I
smart.
love
And
that. That's
yeah,
amazing.
I mean, this is I'm trying not to tip too much because I don't want to. Obviously, I'm probably going to give away my ranking with this, but this is my second favorite Best Picture winner ever that I've seen.
Wow.
But like it's
Okay.
number 2 behind another film that we haven't talked about yet, so I won't say what that is, but from another year. But it's my number 2 Best Picture winning film. That's not to say it's my number 2 film of the year, because there's so many films I love that weren't nominated, but this is, or didn't win. But of all the movies that have won Best Picture, this is my number 2 because I just I don't really find any flaws with it, because like
Yeah.
it's not too sad or too happy. It's this perfect medium. It's not too smart to where it feels unnatural. It's still natural in the character's way of speaking, but it's still funny and smart. It's still very well shot. I mean, the way they use the apartment and the way they block the scenes around it is still so good too. Where I think that's one thing that doesn't ever get talked about with the apartment that should be, is the actual filmmaking. Like the way, the scenes of him walking down the street, and then the framing of them in the New Year's party, the intimacy close-ups and stuff, like everything about the way it's shot, him in the giant office with all the people surrounding him to show that he's just one of a bunch of people. He doesn't have this uniqueness, and that he wants to find that uniqueness and set himself apart. He doesn't just want to fade into the crowd. I just love all the visual storytelling as well, which I think is underrated in this film, because people highlight the screenplay, or they highlight the comedy, or they highlight the relationships and the characters, but like I think the visual stuff going on is really well done
Oh,
too, and it
absolutely.
goes into the
Yeah.
mirror stuff too, like just the way we're able to see things without having to hear them and knowing what they mean, him waiting outside the elevator or the elevator for her, and then him waiting outside the theater, like, just so good. I
Oh
love it.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's right. And then you have like that one like really cool scene towards the end where like you think he's gonna go with that one girl, but he walks right by her, and it's
Right.
like, oh, he was never going. Like he was lying about actually being with someone and stuff like that. And that's a really cool moment. I love stuff like that.
Mhm.
Just storytelling visually. So yeah, you're dead on. I think
Yeah,
this movie
visual
is
wise.
is pretty perfect in so many ways.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's not much
brilliant.
else it's brilliant, yeah. There's
I,
nothing
I,
really to
I, I was just gonna
anything
say
else?
I
Yeah.
love I love the relationship that's built between Jack and Shirley
Mhm.
in the movie, and I love like the little scenes of them playing cards together and just healing of that, just playing a
Yeah.
game together.
Right,
And
and it doesn't end conventionally that way either. It doesn't end with the big kiss or anything. I don't think they kiss
right,
in the movie, right? She kisses him on the head maybe before she leaves,
I'm
and
not sure. I can't
but
remember.
yeah, it's not. I mean, who's to say they even end up together romance-wise? I'm trying to say it as much as I can, the wise thing, but, like, who even says they end up together romantic-wise? Like, who's to say they don't just end up becoming, like, really close friends? Like, it
Good
doesn't really
friends, yeah,
I think the thing is they're not trying to stress, and I like to think they do get together for real-wise, but, like,
yeah.
I don't think it's necessarily about that, which I love. It's more about just them being together as people rather than, like, a romantic connection at the end,
I
which I
love
love.
that too. That's a great point, that I actually haven't thought about, but I think that's a great point. Um, two other things. One is that whole two people playing cards together thing is done a lot apparently, like around
Yeah.
this time because we saw it in Born Yesterday. We
Yeah.
saw it in this, and then there's another movie in the slate that did it as well.
Mhm.
Um,
Did you hear what I said, Miss Kubelik? I absolutely adore you.
Shut up and deal.
and the other thing is, if you get free tickets to go see The Music Man, and she stands you up, still go see the play.
Right.
You're there, dude.
Right.
You have nothing else going
Right.
on. All
Right.
right.
Even though, no, we'll talk about it when we cover that movie on Picture This. I don't even know if it got nominated. Maybe it
The
didn't.
Music Man?
I think it might have, but
Does it
yeah,
suck?
I don't love it, but maybe I'll grow to love it more. But that's a show where, like, if I got stood up for, I might just like not go. But I
Uh,
at the time though, like, he probably should just go. I mean, it's a free Broadway show. He should go. It's free Broadway. If it was like, like a high school or community theater production of it, I might have just headed home too. But I don't know. That's my own pretentious theater kid talking. Again, don't ever leave a
love it.
show. Go to a show. You have a ticket. Go to see it. The Apartment nominated for 10 Oscars, and it wins half of them. It wins 5. It wins Big One, Big Picture, Best Picture. It wins Director for Billy Wilder. It wins Best Original Screenplay, deserved. It wins Best Art Direction, Black and White, for the beautiful, set designs, obviously, of that apartment. Best Film Editing. It is also nominated for 3 acting awards: for Best Actor for Jack Lemmon, Actress for Shirley MacLaine, Supporting Actor for the Doctor himself, Jack Crushen, and then Sound and Cinematography, Black and White. So it was a pretty gargantuan day for the apartment. I don't know. Gargantuan and gantry is the only kind of wordplay I could come up with. How do you fit Elmer Gantry into a segue? You don't.
No idea.
But tell us, Chad. Elmer Gantry. Wait, I got a segue. Christmas, Jesus, religion. Elmer Gantry. There you go.
There you go. Elmer Gantry, directed by Richard Brooks, written by Richard Brooks, cinematography by John Alton, music by Andre Previn, starring Burt Lancaster, Gene Simmons, Arthur Kennedy, Dean Jagger, Shirley Jones, and Patty Page. Excuse me. Synopsis: a con man and an evangelist sell religion to small town America. Based on Elmer Gantry by Sinclair Lewis. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah. I remember before we watched this, you had told me, you were like, "Oh, I don't know about this one. It's like, it's a movie where it's kind of like the coonskin cap thing with John Wayne, where it's like the poster's literally him like holding up a Bible to you, and you're like, oh, what is this? Is this going to be preachy?" And it was very interesting because I also was a little worried about that too. And then, like, the very beginning, it's like, if your kids are impressionable, like, don't show them. And then Chad texted me, he's like, oh, Dylan, you're an impressionable child. Maybe you should watch this. And I didn't understand what you meant. And then it started. I was like, I see. But it's a lot more than just preaching religion, which is
Yeah.
important to note. But Chad, what do you think of this? This is a first watch for both of us. What do you think?
Yeah, so a lot of that, the Alamo bit with the coon skin was serious. This one I was completely joking with all of that. So I just was like, oh, here we go. He's holding up a Bible, kind of a deal. I thought it was like really, really funny. So I was just having a good time with that. But no, I really like this movie a lot.
Cool.
Elmer Gantry, I think, kind of rules. I don't know. I liked like the discussions, like religious discussions and like the Alamo and stuff like that. I just wasn't vibing with, but like with this one, I thought it was like really like mature. It had a lot to say about religion, and it wasn't like super pro religion, but also not super anti. It just had a lot of things to say about it. Like there are a lot of people preaching certain things. You have things in the movie where Elmer is, because he's the confidence man. He's going around teaching religion to people, but he's doing it in the big kind of Tammy Faye kind of way, where it's like sensationalism and stuff like that. And a lot of people are hating that. But he's going around stuff like he has like an actual chimpanzee there, and he's like, "You think this is my grandfather? What are you talking about? That's crazy. We don't descend from this." And he's like playing with the monkey and stuff. And it's like you see people do stuff like that today. Like people in Congress bringing in a snowball, like global warming. I got a snowball right here. And it's just like, okay. So it's like poking fun at that a little bit. I love how you have people who are like, will say, there's like one line that I love that someone says, how can somebody read the Bible and just get like the worst things from it? Like they just get all the negativity that's, in the Bible, and that's what they like hook on. And there's a lot of good stuff in there too, like about, Christmassy type stuff about, goodwill to man and stuff. I think it's all in the Bible, and no one really talks about that stuff. So I think it has a lot of really interesting things to say. I think Burt Lancaster is amazing as Elmer Gantry. There's certain times when he's, like when he first starts singing in the, with like in the, like the black church and stuff and the chapel, and everyone's like, who's this guy? And then he starts singing. They're like, all right. They start singing with him. And then like, when he's preaching to everyone and, everyone's like enthralled, I'm also enthralled. And I'm like, holy crap. I probably would listen to this guy.
We're coming back to you, God. We're coming back to the old time religion.
But yeah, I have a lot more to say, but I'll let you, let you talk now too.
Yeah, I agree with you. You said, what did you say? He was amazing in this role?
Yeah.
I disagree. I think he's
Interesting.
utterly phenomenal in this role.
Oh.
I think this is, here's the thing. I really think this movie is not necessarily a movie I would like gravitate towards. I think there's an interesting satirical element at play with, this kind of talk about religion and the way it's presented and the way people sometimes, sell it for what it is or what it's not. There's a lot of complexity about that I'm just not as, I'm not as religious as some other people, so I'm not as engrossed with that. But why I was engrossed with it is because of his character and his performance. And I think that's so important to this film. It's all centered around him, and he needs to be the biggest, showman in the room. But you also have to understand how that can be a detriment at times, and that there's a complexity there. And I think his performance is one of the best I've seen in many years of doing many years, meaning like the past few, like picture this episodes of like covering all these years of movies.
With Christ, you're saved. And without him, you're lost. And how do I know there's a merciful God? Because I've seen the devil plenty of times.
Just so good and so charismatic, and he's got such a gravitas on the screen to where I'm intrigued, to where at times, honestly, I kind of tuned out a lot of the dialogue and what was going on just to kind of watch him and not
Yeah.
really like kind of to where I feel like a lot of it went over my head, to be honest with you, to where I want to, this is an example of a film that I don't think I liked as much as you, but I want to watch it again because I do think I can love it, because a lot of it went over my head on the first watch because like I'm not as like in tune and tapped into all this like religious talk and stuff, to where I need to like kind of probably just watch it again with like a deeper lens. But I
Yeah.
really just think his performance is what kept it kind of going a mile a minute, because this is a long film. A lot of these films are long, but I think his performance keeps it, at that high and at that level and at that rate. I really love this performance. I loved a lot of this film because of that.
Love, not the carnal, but the divine love. And where does this great love come from? It comes direct from God.
I
Yeah.
just want to see it again to get a lot more out of it, because I think you got a lot out that first time, where I was just so like fixated on the performance. But that's not to say the film is full of great stuff either. Like I do think that satirical stuff is really good. A lot of it reminded me actually of There Will Be Blood with Paul Dano's character. A lot of it,
Yeah.
not necessarily to that extreme at times, but that kind of idea of the kind of overbearingness almost at times, and the just the extremity sometimes that this can get to. But yeah.
Yeah. It was I didn't know what to expect from this movie, and, when I kinda gave myself over to it, it's one that I just kind of fell in love with,
Hmm.
and I was like, I was just sitting there like, this is one that even though it is longer, I could easily just watch this again. I wanted to just restart it as soon as I finished it, and it's kind of the complete opposite of what I wanted to do with the Alamo. I was like, I maybe never want to
Right.
watch this again. I don't mean to
Right.
keep like shitting on a movie. Like
No,
I'm
it's
not.
fine. It's
That's not
fine.
what I'm trying to do. But
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like for me personally, I just was like, I'm glad that's over. But then Elmer Gantry, I'm over here like, wow, okay. I want to go back just to watch from now what I know from the end of the movie with his character. I want to watch his character all over again, because I do think you're right. I think the Burt Lancaster performance is the best part of the movie. Um, and I love a lot of things about this movie. I love the filmmaking part of it. Like there's some sections of the movie, it's like a kind of a wild movie. There's like I said about the apartment and stuff like that. Like it's a little risque. Like there's
Hmm.
long stretches where they're talking about like sex just openly and stuff. I'm like, whoa, okay, 1960, all right. Because
Hmm.
I don't think that would be happening a lot in like the 50s and stuff. So I feel like
Right,
this
with
could be
with
like a
Code and
turning
stuff.
point.
Yeah, I don't know when
Yeah,
Code ended. It was probably before this, obviously, but yeah.
I guess,
Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, there's like just parts where it'll show something and there'll just be this loud like music cue, like "Bah!" and I'm like, whoa, okay. So it's like kind of an epic movie. I love uh I love how the commentary that it has about like evangelists and
Hmm.
what they're trying to do, and making money. Like I mean, he's a con man, so he's in it for the money, kind of deal. But I love that he's in it for the money, but he's so like in it that it's like he knows so much about religion that he like challenges people, and someone will go like, "This it says in the Bible this," and he'll go, "Actually," and
Yeah.
he'll like kind of school them.
That reminds
Um,
me, I'll let you continue just a sec, but that reminds me
yeah.
while it's on my brain. I watched for the first time ever a new favorite Christmas movie of mine that I'd never seen before for this month. That's made my favorite director, Catch Me If You Can. And that reminds me a lot of that, where it's like you're a con man, you're not actually this or that, but you are going so far as to like make sure you have no flaws and cracks so no one can bust you, that you end up becoming an expert on something. And not to spoil that movie, but Leonardo DiCaprio basically scamming his way to becoming a pilot and like doing all this stuff with checks and stuff ends up being beneficial in him in the long run, because he knows so much about it that he ends up
Hmm.
like I hate to spoil it, but it's a 20-year-old movie by now, but like he actually gets
It's
employed.
history.
He gets
Yeah.
employed and gets out of jail early to do that for a living, because he's so good at it, because he was a con at it for so long. And it's kind of like what you just said. It's like he's so good at it, he still understands it so much that he could just do it for real without the con
Yeah.
of it all. But that's what also makes it so interesting and kind of scary to a degree too. The idea that he is not this guy, he's posing as something he's not, which I think is really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. Conmen movies and shows and all that stuff I find really fascinating as well. I just love to
Hmm.
see them do what they do. You brought
Right.
up Catch Me If You Can, which I think is a movie that rules. I love that
Hmm.
movie.
Yeah.
And I think Leo is perfect in that movie doing the confidence man
Hmm.
thing because you could just watch a scene of him doing it and you're like, how did he get out of that? That's so insane. And
Right.
Elmer Gantry is kind of the same way with that. And you do hear a lot about that about people who get in trouble, but then they're like, "Oh, your talents are so good that we just have a job instead of jail,
Right.
have a job," which is pretty great. But yeah, other things I love about this movie is there's a character you learn a little bit about Elmer's past where he had like
Hmm.
a sexual
Affair. Yeah.
affair with a woman who I don't know if she was a sex worker then, but she is like later,
Yeah.
I think.
Lulu, right? You're
Um,
talking about?
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Shirley Jones won the Oscar for this. Yeah.
yeah, and you see her and she at first he sees her when he's like going on his tirade and trying to like cure the town of like crazy sex stuff and all that and whatnot and all the promiscuity and drinking because prohibition is a big part of the movie as well where they're like
Right.
shutting down speakeasies and like get out of here which I thought is pretty great. I mean, not that he was doing all this stuff, but pretty
Right.
great as far as like a satire goes and a big part of the movie. And like he sees her, and then he's like, this is you know that there was a history there, and then you see her talking and about how she wants to like revenge on him and stuff, and she gets it, and I think it's a really big scene
Hmm.
where the town is turned on Elmer, and he was this like highly respected, beloved man, like who they listened to on on the edge of their seats, and now he's getting food and stuff thrown at him,
Right.
and I love his reaction that what he does is not go like why would you do this to me to that lady, and instead he knows he did her wrong, and she even knows like he's not that guy that's gonna go and berate her for doing what she did, but he's going to show her compassion, and I love that's what he does is that she gets beat up by what was it, like her pimp or something like that,
Yeah.
but she gets beat up by him like he's slapping the shit out of her, which I'm like, damn, okay. And he goes and beats him up and defends her and then like takes care of her and stuff like that. And then she retracts it, and and I love that so much. I did not expect it to go that way. And I think that's
Right.
another thing that surprised me in the movie. There's so much in this movie that I thought was pretty brilliantly written.
Yeah. It's so ahead of its
Um,
time too. Just in what you were saying with all the themes it's tackling and stuff. You know.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I even haven't really even discussed the relationship between him and the evangelist. And it's just an interesting kind of thing where, she's not really respected because I guess of her gender,
Hmm.
and stuff like that. And she ends up dying in a fire at the end. And I was like, whoa, okay, that was dark. I didn't expect that to happen. But that's a pretty rich relationship in the movie as well. So there's a lot in this movie that I want to watch it again just to like
Right.
grasp everything that's in this because it, like you said, it's long, but I think it's packed with a lot of great stuff.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I'm
And
sorry, I
and
really like this one.
no, it's fine. I mean, you said it all really, but the last bit I want to talk about is after the fire at the end, and you kind of have this like last like beat with him, and it's the last
Hmm.
thing he says is, "When I was a child, I understood as a child and spoke as a child. When I became a man, I put away childish things," and it's like that
Yeah,
idea of him like finally like being like shit, like life is deeper and darker and I need to like start manning up and actually stop being a child type thing, which I think is very interesting, and just this philosophical side of it all. Yeah, it's hard to talk about this because I'm going to compare it to a film we haven't talked about yet, but when you look at like vignettes and stuff where like there's like little side plots and stuff and little moments and little almost like episodic, the thing that Elmer Gantry does well that this other film we're about to talk about doesn't is the fact that I think it has a through line even in these vignettes, in these little bits, in these kind of episodic parts. It still feels like it's connecting to an overall greater theme and an overall greater character study. There seems to be overall cohesion better better cohesion, I think, which is a strength of this film, is that it can kind of take some side plots and kind of introduce new elements and kind of have these vignettes, but it all still kind of accumulates in this one total thing, an idea that maybe another film we'll talk about soon like doesn't do necessarily. So
Yes, yeah, I 100% agree with all that. Yeah, and I think I know the film you're talking about. We'll get
maybe,
there.
maybe,
Hopefully,
yeah.
well, maybe
Hopefully we'll get there. I hope so. we only,
we will.
yeah, we will.
Everything's good here, so yeah, we'll.
But yeah, Elmer Gantry. Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll talk about it more later when we give out some superlatives. But it was nominated for only 5 Oscars, but it won 3. It won for Best Actor for Burt Lancaster, won Best Supporting Actress for Shirley Jones, and won Best Adapted Screenplay. It was also nominated for Best Picture and nominated for Best Score. So whether you're watching it with your kid, with your lover, with your wife, you're gonna enjoy it. No matter whether you're a son, whether you're a lover, sons and lovers. Chad, tell us about Sons and Lovers.
Alrighty, Sons and Lovers, directed by Jack Cardiff, written by Gavin Lambert and T.E.B. Clark, cinematography by Freddie Francis, music by Mario Nascimbene, starring Trevor Howard, Dean Stockwell, Wendy Hiller, Mary Urey, Heather Sears, William Lucas, and Conrad Phillips. Synopsis: a promising young man is manipulated by his mother and can't quite figure out how to be in a healthy relationship. Based on Sons and Lovers by D.H. Lawrence.
There you go. So yeah, Chad, this is the first watch for both of us. When we were talking before we recorded this, I talked about how like sometimes even if there was like a dramatic lull from the story, there were a lot of films that still looked really good. This is kind of the epitome of what I was talking about, where like this and the Alamo were like, there's parts of this thing that sometimes drag, but like this is one of the best shot films I've seen at this time in black and white, given what it's about. Because it's really, there's no real like splendor, there's really no cinematic stuff going on in the movie, but it's so well shot and so well, photographed. I was just really blown away by that first and foremost. So I want to just give a kudos to the cinematography, and I believe it won Best Cinematography Black and White, so it did deserve it. But yeah, that was one thing I was like, wow, like regardless of the story, like this looks great for 1960. But now let's get into the actual film itself. Chad, what were your thoughts on Sons and Lovers?
Yeah, Sons and Lovers is interesting. It's one that I liked more than the Alamo, but I just think it's okay. I don't think it's like,
oh wow,
I don't think this one is a really great one. I think this one. Okay, so here's one thing that I wrote at the very end. I went, "Does Paul become an incel?" That was my ending thought for the movie. I'm like, okay, I'm trying to figure out what the movie was about. And I know it's like a coming of age movie for Paul. So it kind of feels like we get a lot of coming of age movies these days, but I'm looking back at Sons and Lovers and I'm like, it's kind of like a coming of age. He's trying to figure out what he's supposed to do. There's problems at home. Parents are fighting. His dad's abusive to his mother. His mother's manipulative to him. And, she doesn't understand him wanting to leave and pursue his like intellect outside and his art and things like that. He's got a girlfriend who has a religious mother, and her mother's like, you shouldn't be like having sex and stuff like that. But then he wants to have sex with her, and they do it, and he feels weird about it because he's like, I know you didn't actually want to fully do that, like you just kind of felt like an obligation kind of a deal, and I feel bad. And then he goes and he cheats on her with some other lady, or maybe he just left her, I can't remember the details, but just left her and then started going out with this lady who's married and trying to figure out stuff with her. And then they end up breaking up because I guess she wanted to stay with her husband. And then it seemed like he just swore off women after that.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, okay.
Well, you said you didn't know what it was about, and then you just said the whole plot. You know what it's about.
Well, that's what I'm saying is like not.
Say?
What I'm saying is I don't think there's like a cohesive like theme for the movie. Okay. Like I think it was like about this and about that, but there's nothing like to ground it in. Okay. This is a story about this. It's just about Paul, and he can't figure out what the hell he wants to do.
See, okay. That's very interesting. I think this is going to be an episode where we're very our rankings are going to be very lopsided because I loved.
Okay.
I think it's a great
Oh.
film, and I think it's because okay.
Okay.
I like to think that this movie's about mommy issues. It's very clearly about mommy issues, and I think
Mhm.
it's to show that
It's
even
no
in his,
Psycho.
that he struggles. Well, that's one of my two. So I have two qualms with this film. One, I think Dean Stockwell's very bad in it. But my number
Okay.
two is that I think coming out in the same year of Psycho, it's done a disservice because I feel like a lot of people now only consider Psycho as like the movie about mommy issues of 1960, and it's like just very unfortunate that it came out the same year as it. But I don't necessarily think that should like hold this movie back from being its own good thing. But I do think, and I don't mean it in the fact that Dean Stockwell's very bad in it, but he's very clearly American, and like his accent is not that good, and it sticks out a little bit.
Is this like a British movie?
Yeah, yeah.
And I imagined it to be London. I saw myself in my own studio by the river.
Sometimes
yeah,
they talk in
Right.
British accents, and I'll go like, "Oh, if this movie's been British this whole time."
Right. Well, and
I
I
don't
think
know.
it's because Dean Stockwell's British accent's not that good, but he's very clearly American. But
It's
I do think,
also because like I watched Wonka, and I was like, "This is totally a British movie," but
yeah,
Wonka himself speaks with an American accent the whole time. So
right,
I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It's just
very, very
sometimes I'm just like,
but yeah, like I think it's really boils down to mommy issues. And yes, there's a lot about him and his own relationships, but I think it always kind of cycles back to his mommy issues and the idea that like he can never truly love and like understand what real love is because he's always held back by her, or he always feels like he owes it to her to do something else or do something different. And the idea that he has this first love that he can't quite connect with because his mom is so present, that when he finally pivots to this married woman, there's that idea of, is it because he actually finds her intriguing, or is it because she's this maturity he needs to finally like stand up to his mother, or is it because she kind of resembles a more motherly figure because she is married, and that element of kind of that mommy issues thing that you see of like people, with mommy issues wanting a more motherly figure as a spouse, but then also kind of coming back around and realizing at the end that it's kind of scarred him and it's kind of this trauma, this emotional trauma. And I think this is kind of what you were saying about the year in general of going for like deeper, darker themes. I think this is like kind of a tough theme to talk about in film because a lot of the time, you know, parent and children relationships aren't covered as much, at least this time, at this time of the history, in a negative way, really. It's, mostly about affairs and marital stuff, but I feel like very rarely until like 1960, we'll say, because Psycho and this, it really dives into the fact that you can have a toxic relationship with your parents. And like I am fortunate enough that I don't come from that background, and I have not experienced too much of it secondhand, but I do think like it is real for some people, and some people to have like mommy or daddy issues, and sometimes it kind of reflects how they love or prevents them from fully loving. And I think that's kind of what it is. It is a coming of age film, but in the tinge of him not being able to come of age because he's so restricted and so held back. But then when she dies, I feel like there's almost this guilt that happens where he's like, maybe I did spend too much time pining after these women. Maybe I should have been there for my mother. But then I know the dad is terrible to the mother, but I really like this last speech the dad gives him about, it's a very kind of reminded me of like Michael Stuhlbarg and Call Me by Your Name, like that speech that he
ooh,
gives, where it's like,
mhm.
that kind of idea of what the themes of the movie is, and I think that's important, and where he ultimately results in at the end. At the end of this story, he's sworn off love, but I do think he'll be able to continue. But I think
Yeah.
it's to show a realness and a darkness of the fact that some people are so emotionally scarred by their parents or have such issues that they are not able to fully give themselves to someone else. And I don't think it's necessarily a love triangle in the way of should he have chosen that girl versus that girl. I think it's more of these are the women he's, you know, courting and investing himself in throughout the movie, but like how does his relationship with his mother affect his relationship with other women? And I think that is ultimately what the film is trying to say. And now I don't necessarily know, I agree with you, I don't really know if it's trying to say that necessarily mothers are evil but also like certain relationships can be very toxic, I think is what it's trying to say, at least what I interpreted from it. And it's also hard not having personal experience to really be able to attest to that, but I'm curious if someone does have some more issues like that, like how they would respond to something like this, because I don't necessarily know if it's condemning unhealthy relationships or if it's saying don't get close to your mother, or if it's just if your parents are toxic, don't let that hold you back from living your life kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean the title is Sons and Lovers. There's obviously a familial aspect to it of like sons and lovers or sons versus lovers? Like, does the idea of being a son to someone who's so protective, so helicopter, versus, lovers, like wanting to actually just like find real genuine love, and the idea of unconditional love not necessarily translating to actual well nurturing and well natured like relationships, like, yeah, you're a parent, you can love someone all you want, but it's a ladybird thing of like, do you like me? Like, I know you love me, but do you like me? We see it in Fences too with Denzel Washington as his son. It's like, I don't think you like me, Dad. You love me, but do you like me? It's that whole thing here, I think, as well. It's like, is this actual love, or is it because it's my mom? And is it more of a territorial thing? And I do think the one setback, what I said, is that I don't love Dean Stockwell in it. So I think at times, because he's so front and center, it holds it back. But I think the performance from Wendy Hiller as his mother and Trevor Howard as his father is really strong. So it's like, it kind of balances it out for me. But that's ultimately what I grasp from the movie. But yeah, it is very complex though in that way, because it does kind of meander, kind of like some of these other films do. Even Elmer Gantry, like, it kind of has these like different side plots and different vignettes, but it's all about how it kind of has a through line and kind of consistently connects to one another. And I think this one does. Like, it has a good through line of, mommy issues and this relationship with his mother kind of being the core of everything else. But I don't know.
That's definitely an interesting way to look at it, and like I was trying to find that through line that you're talking about, and I think you found it, or at least you found like what it means to you. But like when I was looking through it too, because like you were like comparing it to like other like more recent movies that you've seen. I was doing that a little bit as well, but it was like to a very different part of the movie where I found the idea of the dad going in and working in the mines with and his brother died in the mines, which is a big part of the movie. Well, it feels like a small part of the movie actually that doesn't really continue throughout. Like it doesn't feel like that persists as much. But it's like I felt like that was going to be like a bigger part of it. I mean, you get like the dad who's like, what, you think you're better than me going off to try to pursue your education while I'm going down into the mines and stuff.
Yeah.
And then I feel like it's been done a little bit better in other movies, like October Sky is one of my favorite movies.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, you have that aspect of it, and then you have the mother aspect of it, and you have all the relationships. And I think the mother and the relationships all kind of, like you said, have kind of like a through line. But then you have like this other thing that I think is to the side, but maybe it's not, because it does kind of influence like how the dad is. And then maybe because like he's so cruel to her, that's how she develops this kind of toxic relationship with her son. So maybe there is a little bit of a line that goes through it. But when I was watching it, I didn't get that. But there are a lot of parts of the movie that I did like. So it's not, this isn't one that I just despised or anything. This is one that I liked, but I didn't think it was like, as good as some of the other ones in the slate.
Yeah, especially like with what I said with Psycho coming out that year too. It's tough because it's like that movie's very much about mommy issues too, but it's a totally different movie. But it's a disservice that movie covers themes in this a lot better than this one does. Yeah.
Yeah, I do think it does explore a lot of interesting stuff, and you hit on a lot of those. And I think maybe on a second watch, this one definitely could get better for me. But when I was trying to grasp it, I was like, I think this one might not be great, but it's like good kind of a deal. So I don't know. It's definitely one that's kind of a little wishy-washy for me, but I like some of the performances. I liked a lot of the stuff. I'm just wondering if there was not enough connective tissue, as I've seen in other things that came later that I thought might have done it a little bit better.
Right.
But that's not a fault of the movie. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And I did think it was good. But
The one fundamental thing they do though with the other relationships is there's that scene where he goes, I forget if it's Clara or if it's Miriam's house, but I think it might be Miriam. But he goes to her house, and the mother's very much like, oh yeah, pour yourself a drink. Like, here, I'll get you something. Like, have a seat. She's very welcoming, and he's never really experienced that before. And I think it kind of takes him back, and he's like, whoa, like this is what a real caring maternal relationship is. I thought that scene was very important as well. Yeah, because it's very interesting. Because at first I almost compared it to Ordinary People, but it's not that, because Ordinary People, the mother resents the child, whereas here it's the opposite, where she's evil to him, but it's out of a infatuation and a territorial possession way. It's like she needs to like sink her claws into him. He's not allowed to love anyone else. Oh, you have to be here for mother. It's very interesting in that way. To where it's like
Yeah.
total opposite of like an Ordinary People type deal, where like, yeah, there's a child who's lost, who's there's that element of it, but instead that film, it's more about how she resents her child who survived, whereas here it's like, no, you're the child that stayed with mommy, I love you, which I think is
Yeah.
also very, very important.
I also just forgot, definitely. I also just forgot though that there's a whole other aspect of this movie that where it's like a lot of feminism stuff going on. So like there's like people who are like protesting for their
Right.
rights, and I thought that part was interesting, but I just didn't know like if it really fit in with the rest of the movie either. Where I was like, I could see because like he's thinking from kind of like a feminist perspective where like his first girlfriend or whatever, like they had sex, and then he's like, "You really didn't want to do it." Now I feel weird
Mhm.
about it. I feel
Yeah.
almost like a villain, and I think maybe it kind of plays into that where he's actually thinking about it from like a feminist perspective. It's not like just
Right.
like I wanted to do it, so that's why we did it.
Well, I think
So
it's also because when he has sex with the first girl, it's like she's a little bit more sheltered too, because she's younger.
true.
But when he meets this other woman, she's so liberated, and that's where I think a lot of the political stuff
That's a good
comes in through,
point.
where he's like, wow, this is someone who like thinks for herself, and like, and then he finds out she was married but is separated, and he's like, wow, she was able to like get out of that toxic relationship. Wow, like I want to get out of my toxic relationship. I want this woman because she clearly resembles this freedom and liberation that I can't have for my own mother and my own family. I've never seen someone like this. I'm so attracted to this, where it's like you're more attracted to the idea of liberation than you are this person. And she, I think,
Yeah,
stands for this idea of liberation, to where when he finally commits to an affair with her, he immediately gets out of it, because he's like, no, I can't do this to my mother. So my mother has an emotional hold on him. He can't himself liberate himself. And it's kind of this kind of karma thing of like he wants so badly to be liberated, that like this woman who's literally, that's what she stands for, is like the idea of freedom and values, and like respecting oneself, to then just kind of pivot back to, I gotta be there for my mother, I can't be with you. You're almost too free thinking, and I wish you could be. And I think that's also part of the emotional turmoil, and why that relationship, I think, does kind of tie to the ultimate through line, because it is complex in that way. um I agree though, it's not the most investing, like it does have a few lulls. Like there were times where I had to kind of like, just hone in a little deeper, because I was finding myself trailing off a little bit. But I do still think it's got a lot of interesting stuff it's saying, and I do still think, like what I said originally, the visual, like when they were walking by, I think it was a little wintry at one point, and they were walking by this like frozen or like snow covered hill or whatever. It was just really nicely photographed, which I was surprised by, because this film is not a very, it almost feels like it could be a play, but it's not. They make it like very beautiful to look at. Yeah.
yeah, and I didn't think it had like that many lulls either. Like I thought, because I think I watched this like right after the Alamo too,
Mhm.
which is one that I thought dragged quite a bit. So Sons and Lovers was pretty brief to me. Um, but yeah, you're listening. That's why I love the discussion, because listening to you talk about it, I'm like, I think you're making it better in my head than when I actually watched it. So that's
Yeah.
why I actually bought this one. So I know
Oh,
I was
cool.
talking to, should I rent it? Should I buy it? I bought it. So I'm actually interested to go back and watch this at some point again, just to, with everything you're saying, because I'm like, that does make sense. That is a really good
Mhm.
connecting from this part that I thought was kind of distant to why it was necessary. Um, and then another thing that I was thinking when you were just talking about the relationship, the toxic relationship between the mother and son, I was and like kind of stunting, and how kind of like that thing affected the rest of his life, and how kind of sad and depressing that is a little bit, kind of and doomed he kind of was, kind of
Mhm.
made me think about another movie that we've praised on this thing, Dead Poet Society,
Yeah.
because he also has so much aspirations and all this stuff, and it's not a mother son thing, it's a father son thing, and it's not like this weird possessive thing or anything like that. It's
Right.
a different kind of toxic relationship, but it is one. And
Yeah.
it stunts him so much. And I don't want to give away the ending of that movie. I haven't seen
Mhm.
it. But yeah, it's another very depressing movie. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think this one is kind of similar in that way. I don't think it's
Yeah.
good. It's as good as that movie was, but yeah, I'm interested to rewatch this one.
Yeah. And one more thing about the end, like the whole like, is he an incel? Is he like swearing off women altogether? I think it's just another element of just like the kind of conversation he has with the father right before that, where it's like, you just gotta live your own life. Be free for once. Your mother's dead. Like, it's sad, obviously, but like
Yeah,
she's
yeah.
dead. You have the freedom now. Like, just enjoy your freedom. And I think that's kind of what it is, more so than like fuck women. It's more of like, I just gotta live now. I just gotta be my like
That's
just
a good
learn what
point.
it's like to be on my own,
That was
and it's kind of like
that
the
was
end of
kind of
Barbie. We'll talk about it, in a few months,
true.
but it's kind of the
Oh,
end
we
of Barbie
definitely
of like,
will.
oh,
Yeah.
I just need to be myself. I can't. I need to go outside the box, quite literally.
That's actually a really good point, and that I mean, me talking about the incel thing was kind of a jokey, like, is he an incel now, kind of a deal. But I didn't dislike the character or anything like that. I didn't think he was like writing some manifesto like women are the worst or anything like that. But
There you go.
yeah,
Well, Sons and Lovers wins 1 out of its 7 nominations. It wins for Best Cinematography Black and White. It's nominated for Best Picture, Best Director for Jack Cardiff, Best Actor for Trevor Howard, the father, Best Supporting Actress for Mary Uri, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Art Direction Black and White. But we talked about with The Apartment. In the winter, the sun just keeps going down earlier and earlier and earlier. It's like, give me more sunlight. I hate when the sun goes down. The Sundowners make me a downer this time of year. But anyway, segueing out of seasonal depression into Australia. Chad, tell us about the Sundowners.
crikey, the Sundowners, directed by Fred Zinnerman, written by Isabel Leonard, cinematography by Jack Hildyard, music by Dmitry Tiomkin, starring Deborah Kerr, Robert Mitchum, Peter Ustinov, Glynis Johns, Dinah Merrill, and Chips Rafferty. Synopsis. Should cut that part out.
What was that?
Something's banging upstairs. I have no idea, but I was like, "What the hell?"
Maybe it's the Australians. Maybe they didn't like your blimey or whatever. You
No,
just...
they're not. They're not upper. They're from down under.
Nice.
Synopsis: A family is torn between living a nomadic lifestyle and settling down in a home of their own. Based on The Sundowners by John Cleary. And by the way, I said crikey as like the transition, but I was happy when they actually said crikey in the movie. I was like,
Right.
they say it.
Right.
Crikey.
All right, Chad. What do you think of the Sundowners?
I like the Sundowners. I thought this one was pretty good. I like I liked also that it was kind of I call it foreign. If you're Australian, you wouldn't. But I liked how it was like an Australian movie. I liked. I think they're all Australian actors, except for like maybe the one that might have been. They're not really.
No,
None of
I
them
don't
were
think a lot. I
Australian.
mean, some of them might be, but a lot of them aren't. And that's my biggest complaint about this movie is the accents are so terrible.
I'm gonna stay, Mum, and I think you ought to stay too.
Don't ever ask me to choose between you and your dad because I'll choose him every time.
They are so terrible to where I was
Oh.
like, the whole time I was like, oh my God, what is happening? Anyway, continue. No, I don't think, I know Deborah Kerr is British. And then I think,
Gotcha.
so Deborah Kerr is British, right? No, she's English. Robert Mitchum is from Connecticut. Peter Ustinov is from Switzerland. Glynis Johns is from South Africa. Yeah, they're all over the place. And I think that's one of my biggest complaints about this movie, that I very much loathe the way you loathe the Alamo. So it's going to be fun to talk about. But what else did you like about it, though?
Interesting. Yeah. Well, that's the thing is like I'm not like an accent person, so they fooled the hell out of me. I guess I don't know that many like Australian people that I talk with regularly that I just be like, that's fake. So for me, they fooled me. I don't know. It wasn't like a Keanu Reeves and Dracula type of thing for me, but like I know you're very attuned to like accents and stuff like
And the
that.
thing is, it's like
So I
if they
could,
all just if they all picked the same accent to do, if they all had the same training and they all had a uniform way of talking, it would have been different. But the fact is, like, I think everyone's Australian accent's a little different for me, for my ear, to
mm,
where I was like, oh my god, like I was laughing at it. And I felt bad laughing at it, but it was comical to me. I was like, this is funny.
You get rid of that silly flaming hat.
Let me tell you about this silly flaming hat, my good man.
And don't call me that. I'm not your good man.
gotcha.
But,
Well, accents aside, like, if you can put that aside, or maybe you're ignorant like I am, then maybe it won't bother you as much. But like for me, I really like the story and the characters. I like it. It actually reminded me a lot of Nomadland, a movie that we liked on this thing. But I I kind of liked it a little more than Nomadland, as far as like portraying um that nomadic lifestyle, and just the main actor who wants who doesn't want to be tied down, who doesn't want to um settle down, and it's like, I'm not old, I'm gonna live this, I'm just gonna keep moving on. When the sun goes down, I'm moving on, kind of a deal. But his wife and his child don't want that. They both really want to just kind of like settle down, get a farm or home of their own, and just find somewhere to be. And it's almost like, in a way, like he prefers the way he likes to do things over his family. And for me, I'm someone who likes film criticism, and I like to talk to you about movies and
mhm.
go to the movies and stuff. I had a child recently, so I had to kind of adapt to that, and I haven't been able to go to the theater as much. I'm gonna try to do it more. It's kind of a New Year's resolution for me to go to the theaters more and try to balance that, film fan slash family man lifestyle. And for
Mhm.
him, he doesn't want to sacrifice that. And I love how this is kind of a journey for him to realize what's more important in his life. This thing that he wants to do is like, why is that so important to you, versus, actually doing something that your family wants to do. Do you love them? Do you want for them? And I just love how there's that. It's also another reason I really like this movie is because I adore the movie Shaun the Sheep from Aardman.
Okay.
And I had watched this with my wife and child, Shaun the Sheep. So it was in that the farmer holds the sheep and shaves off the thing, and it's a very big comedic thing that happens in that movie. So to see it happen in real life in this movie, I was like, that's really cool. I like wanted to take that sheep fur and just like roll in it, and it was just like really interesting to see them do it live. So I thought it was a cool movie about like sheep shearers and stuff like
Mhm.
that. And then yeah, just to see that like dynamic of this kind of difference of opinion in a family. And I mean, it's a very simple movie. There's not much going on, but it's also not like extremely long or anything like that. So
Re
for me, I just really liked the it didn't feel long, at least
Okay,
for
I was gonna
me.
say it's like 2.5
Maybe
hours. Yeah, yeah.
okay, I guess it just didn't feel long because I
Right.
liked a lot of the I think it's for me, this might be my Alamo. If like you really didn't like this
Right.
one,
Well,
I
and it's
thought
funny 'cause
this one
yeah.
I was
Go
just
ahead.
gonna say I actually really like this one because of the surrounding stuff, and I just like the scenery. I like the stuff that they were doing and the family aspect. So yeah, it's
Right.
kind of like
Well, no,
the
and I think it's, like, funny because like, your whole what you love about it so much is his whole, like, "Do I do this for myself? Do I do this for my family?" thing, when that's what I love about all the, people in the Alamo's dilemmas too, of, "Do I do this for my country? Do I do this for my family?" So I just think that's so funny. It's the same exact thing, but it's just in a different context. We like certain things or don't like certain things. Yeah, I was a little harsh when I said
yeah.
I loathe this. I don't loathe it. Like, I don't hate it, but it's just one of those things where I just could never really get into it. Like you said with the Alamo, there was nothing that hooked me in this one. And I think it's because just the sheep stuff wasn't as appealing to me. Maybe if I did love the sheep from Shaun the Sheep, like maybe I would have found those parts more enjoyable. And what I was saying earlier about Elmer Gantry, how remember when I said like there were a lot of like different vignettes and stuff, but it all had a through line that it felt like it kind of all made sense together. Here, I feel like
Hmm.
a lot of the kind of vignettes and stuff don't really go together well. There's really no overarching connection between them for me. I was struggling to find that connective tissue between them all, aside from the fact that they're all Sundowners and they're all leaving and they're all, doing this new thing. They're all nomads. Like that was the only real tie, but there was no thematic element or emotional element connecting them all. Like all of a sudden now it's about horse racing, and then all of a sudden it's about this and that and this and that. To where I almost kind of would have preferred if they made this like a little series, almost like a Little House on the Prairie, where like every episode's like a different adventure with the Sundowners. Here it just didn't all kind of come together for me, to where I didn't really know where the film was going. It didn't really have a consistent plot for me. But I'm not a whole plot guy, so I could appreciate the whole visual elements of it. I didn't particularly love the cinematography and photography as much. I liked the actual scenery, but I feel like some of the shots weren't as impactful to me as other stuff. But again, like I don't know. Maybe it's because I watched this last because I went in order. I just don't know if maybe everything before it, I was coming off of a high with Sons of Lovers, that this one was just a step back cinematography wise. I don't really know what didn't click for me about it, because I do want to like it. Obviously, I want to like everything, but for me, I just never really got there. It was boring for me. I just didn't really, I don't know. I didn't connect with it. And I feel bad because I know you love it, but I just
Yeah.
was really trying. But some movies just don't hook you. And I think it's also the accents were terrible. And I just think, yeah, so just it didn't really go in an interesting direction. Then it just kind of ends, and it ends. You know, like there's no like, it didn't feel like it built to anything special for me.
Oh, well, okay. Well, first, I just want to say, because I think it's just very interesting that you and I, right before, were sitting there messaging like we might have the same exact thing,
Right.
and the
We're not
quality
gonna
on
have the
these
same
are
exact ranking at all.
clear.
We're gonna have the same
We were
number
like,
one, but different 2 through 5s for sure.
but I told you, I was like, the quality on these are clear, and you said, I agree. And
Right.
we're completely different, it feels.
Right. Yeah. Well,
Which is great.
quality I took as like visual quality, like it's still well made. That's what I meant. Like I think it's very clear. Like the Alamo, Sons and Lovers, and Elmer Gantry for me are so well made. Whereas this one I didn't feel that, because of the inconsistent like accent stuff too. I was like, that's not like, whoever was in charge of that fumbled the ball. But yeah, no, it's interesting because yeah, we were so clear. We were like, yeah, no, there's a clear number 5. But I think it's almost cooler and more interesting that we're different in that respect, you know, that we're not just
Yeah.
both dunking on the same film. We're kind of have different altering perspectives. I think that's what makes conversations more interesting, you know.
Yeah, I think my distinction why, because I like how you compared Alamo and Sundowners, because I don't disagree with you. I do think they have some similarities, and I think our like and dislike of each of these movies do kind of reflect just how we're able to get into things, you and I, as just film watchers, and like
Mhm.
we both have little things that bugged us that we just couldn't get over. You with the
Yeah.
accents, me with the raccoon hat, and
Right.
just like not really liking any of the characters. You didn't find any of the characters that you really grasped onto.
I
I
like
didn't
the
really
kid.
see.
Kid was cool.
Yeah, I didn't really see the vignette part of it. Like I thought this was just a movie that like focused on this little family and like what like everything going on with them. Since you said it's 2.5 hours, like I said, like it didn't necessarily feel like 2.5 hours to me, because I was enjoying it. But I could see it being shorter. I could also see the Alamo being shorter.
Right.
But I don't know. I think I just like the concept of this one, and like the conversations they were having in this one, rather than the stuff that was going on in the Alamo. So I think that's why I come to this one. I really like it, and not the other one.
Mhm.
Um, and the ending, I want to say, like I don't know. I think like because you said like it just ends, which I think is true, because it's not like there's no finality, because they like lose all the money, they don't get the home that they wanted, but they kind of resolve to. I feel like he's changed now. So like when they go, finally have enough money from sheep shearing to do this, or horse racing, or whatever they use to get money.
Mhm.
Um, they probably will settle down one way, even though at the beginning of the movie I don't think they would. And now I'm like, I think he would do the right thing for his family and listen to them, and they can actually not break up. And
Right.
I don't know. I like
Yeah.
the ending. I like just them setting off again.
Yeah. See,
Sunset, the
yeah,
end.
you're right. I would have almost kind of liked the
I am right. I'm
finality of
always right.
them
It's like
I would have liked the finality of like seeing them finally like settle down.
that's a
I
good
think that's why
point.
we covered The Emigrants on here, and I loved that film, and I love how it kind of shows their whole process. But you're right, maybe they don't ever settle down, and maybe that is the whole premise of the film, is like life just keeps going, kind of like a nomad land. I I admit my heart broke 3 sizes smaller hearing you say this was better than Nomad Land, but
Well, I don't want to clarify that. I need to see Nomadland again. They're very different movies. They're just
Right.
kind of
They're
about the
just
same
so totally
thing.
different. Yeah, yeah.
And I know you love Nomadland. I've softened a lot on, or hardened. I don't like Nomadland as much as I did the first time I saw it. But I'm wondering if that's just that one over promising young woman kind of a deal for me. Where, and we've had this discussion before, but and on the show. But go watch that episode. So I don't know. It's just for that, but like for this, I just thought that they explored that should we stay somewhere, should we not, kind of a thing better. But I also didn't love the documentary style of Nomadland. I don't know. It's
Mhm.
complex, but
Yeah.
I'm not saying I love this
No, I know.
one way more than
Right.
Nomadland. I think the quality's similar,
Yeah.
but you obviously way disagree.
Yeah, no.
But
Um,
but if
Good
I
point.
watch this again and I pay attention to the accents, then maybe I'll see it a little bit more from
Yeah.
where you see
And no,
it.
yeah, it's not just the accents. I just didn't find the story as engaging either, or the
True.
characters. It's not just the accent, but it does add to it. And actually, that was actually one of the things I enjoyed most was listening to the accents because it was so intriguing to me. I was like, wow, I'm fascinated by all the different accents. So where honestly, that was something that kept me invested. So maybe it's the
Oh,
opposite.
okay.
But maybe it's like more of a framework thing in that way, just that element
Maybe.
of it, the accents. But
Yeah.
regardless, hey, we disagree on some, we agree on others, but I think we might have similar rankings at the top. So we'll get into it in a sec. But let me just tell you all, the Sundowners didn't win any awards, but it was nominated for 5. It was nominated for Best Picture, Best Director for Fred Zinnemann, Best Actress for Deborah Kerr, and Best Supporting Actress for Glynis Johns, and Adapted Screenplay. So there are the 5 movies. We've talked about them. We've disagreed on 3 of them, which is pretty interesting, pretty fun. I like it because it's like it adds to such a cool discussion because then the ones who like it can really be passionate about it, and show why they like it. But without further ado, let us rank these things, Chad. Let's start it off with our number 5s. I know yours and you know mine, but why don't we just say it for posterity's sake? Chad, what is your number 5?
My number 5 is The Alamo.
What? I'm kidding. Yeah, I knew that was coming. My number 5 is the Sundowners. So what is going to be your number 4?
Number 4 is Sons and Lovers.
All right, my number 4. After discussion, this was my number 3, but I think I'm going to put the Alamo at 4. I'm going to put the Alamo at 4. What was your number 3?
Number 3 is the Sundowners.
My number 3 is Elmer Gantry. What is your number 2?
My number 2 is Elmer Gantry.
All right, my number 2 is Sons and Lovers, which means our number 1, as I predicted, is the same one. Chad, say it with me. 1, 2, 3. The Apartment.
Apartment.
Yeah,
I'm
so
saying
we're
it
on a
slower.
2-second delay. Yeah.
It was interesting because like I was telling you, I was like, you were like, I think there's going to be a clear one this year. And then I was like, or this month, and I was like, yeah, but I really like this other one, and it was Elmer Gantry. And there was one time, at one point when I was watching it, I was like, could this tie The Apartment at least? Holy shit. For me, I really liked that one that much. And then when we were talking about The Apartment too, and I was thinking about The Apartment, I was like, every time I think about The Apartment, I'm like, no, it doesn't beat The Apartment. But it came close for me. So there's The Apartment and Elmer Gantry are like 1 and 2, like right up here, and then the rest are a little bit lower. So
yeah, for me it's the opposite. For me, Apartment was way ahead, but it was like my 2 through 4 I was struggling because I really like the Alamo, but I also really like Elmer Gantry, and I love Sons and Lovers. Where Sons and Lovers was like a clear 2 for me at a point. But then Elmer Gantry, I did originally have Elmer Gantry at 4 and Alamo at 3, but I did swap it because talking about Burt Lancaster, I was like, no, Elmer Gantry's got to be above the Alamo for me. Even though I think there's a nostalgic tie to the Alamo, I still think Elmer Gantry is a slightly better movie for me. All right, Chad. So now let's get into our acting prizes. You're going to start us off today with Best Actor, and I honestly don't know where you're going to go here because I know you're fond of a lot of these performances, but who are you going to pick as your Best Actor?
Yeah, I may be giving you a gift here. I'm actually not sure because I know who you might want to pick, but I'm going to go with Burt Lancaster as Elmer Gantry. Okay.
We both have the same number 1, but yeah.
Because I thought there was going to be the other one that you absolutely adore that I was thinking about picking, but then we were talking about Elmer Gantry. I was like, it's like a powerhouse performance from Burt Lancaster. And he won the award. And then the other one that I think you're probably going to pick is the other one that I absolutely love as well. I think there's a lot of like really great physical stuff and things that happen with that one. But Elmer Gantry too is just so physical and just like you want to like believe it. It is kind of like Leo and Catch Me If You Can, where it's like you believe him as a confidence man going in and just you could see people following him and just the way he sings, in that chapel. I'm like, whoa! Right out of the gate, just like slamming hard with this performance, and it is the best part of the movie. I think he rules. I love him singing in the chapel. I love all of his sermons, and then I love when it breaks down towards the end, and you get to see the softer side of him and the compassionate part of him, where he doesn't do the thing that you think. He doesn't take that crazy like evangelist like Ed, you'll go to hell kind of. He doesn't take that. Instead, at the end, he's compassionate with this woman that he's wronged, and I just love all of the complexity to that performance and that role. So yeah, it rules. Love it.
Yeah, it's a great performance. It would have been my pick only because I think in the context of the movies, especially, like there are a plethora of great performances in the other one, whereas I think he is the performance of this one too, which helps. You were very confident about my number one pick, and I'm surprised you love my number one pick so much because you didn't like the raccoon.
Oh my god.
I'm kidding. No, I'm picking Jack Lemmon.
I was about to say, don't do that.
No, I'm kidding. That was my joke. I was trying to make because you were like, I'm assuming you're gonna pick this one. It was so good with the physical comedy. I was ready.
You fooled me.
Yeah, I was ready to just pull a John Wayne on you. No, I'm picking Jack Lemmon. Honestly, I might, if I had the first pick, I still might have gone with Jack Lemmon over Burt Lancaster, but because they're both so different performances too. But
they're
Jack
so
Lemmon,
good, dude.
It's a sentimental one too. Like I connect a lot with Jack Lemmon's character in that movie, and I love his physical comedy. He's so good at delivering all those different lines and comedy that Billy Wilder gives him. It's a great performance, and how he works with the other actors is big too. Is important. Because Elmer Gantry is very much like you're standing out, you are the show, whereas Jack Lemmon kind of lets other people be the show. Sometimes he's a great support to them, even though he's the lead. Like he has those moments where he just lets the others shine too. But they're both amazing performances, and I would have been fine with either one winning, and now they both win, so I'm excited.
And I think it's great that these are the ones that we picked, because Burt Lancaster has that like powerhouse performance kind of a deal, whereas Jack Lemmon's is very like flamboyant in a lot of the ways, and I love that in him in that movie, and also like Some Like It Hot. So he is great in Billy Wilder movies. I totally agree. I love that performance.
Yeah. And I'm going to be a little predictable with my actress. I'm going Shirley MacLaine. I think just the two of them working together is so powerful. You don't have one without the other. She actually carries a lot of the dramatic heft of that movie. So she's got to be my pick. Her moments, especially talking to Fred McMurray's character, who was also a possibility for Best Actor for me, but like the conversations they have are so heartbreaking because you see just that battle inside her of what, is this love? Is this just a materialistic thing? Is this like, who am I to him? What is he to me? Do I deserve more? Yeah, I love it. She's so good in this movie. So,
yeah, I kind of almost wish I had number one for actress because I wanted Shirley MacLaine as well. I do love her in The Apartment so much. I think her performance is it's just one of the best performances ever. So yeah, I that's absolutely the number one pick. But I didn't go with Shirley MacLaine, but I am going to go with Shirley Jones.
Ooh,
so I
okay.
went with another Shirley. Shirley, you can't go with two Shirleys. I am, and don't call me Shirley. Yeah, Shirley Jones rules. I don't know if I was thinking about her in the beginning, but then when we were talking about Elmer Gantry, I was like, yeah, I loved her in that. Because I loved how when you first meet her, you're like, well, she's like some, sex worker and stuff, and not to downplay that or anything, but like she has kind of this turn where she's like, she feels like this, like I have a plan to get back at at him and stuff like that, and she felt like a very like strong character.
Right.
And then I loved kind of the way it turns as well, where it's like she feels bad about what she's doing. Like she wants the revenge, but then she feels bad when she sees what happens to Elmer. And then, she gets just so much complexity to her. I feel like hers is kind of tragic as well. just like Shirley MacLaine. So maybe not as tragic, but yeah, I really like both of those, and it's funny that I picked 2 from Elmer and you picked 2 from The Apartment. So there you go.
Yeah. So the last thing we have to do, which is something we don't do until our December episodes, because it is the end of the year. Now that we have picked our actors, we have something called our Picture This Hall of Fame, where we talk about the actors who have received 2 or more awards, in some cases 3 or 4, and we will be noting them. But just to recap real quick for this episode, our number 1 actors and actresses, my actor was Jack Lemmon, Chad's was Burt Lancaster, my actress was Shirley MacLaine, Chad's was Shirley Jones. And now talking about the Picture This Hall of Fame, we did have one of these 4 got inducted today, so congratulations. I'll bring up their name when we get there. We already have 7 people in it from last time: Tom Hanks, Daniel Day-Lewis, Richard Dreyfuss, Sidney Poitier, Tim Robbins, Sissy Spacek, and James Stewart. Today we honor 7 more inductees. We have 7 new inductees to the Picture This Hall of Fame. Those actors are with 2 Picture This awards for Elizabeth and Tar. We have Kate Blanchett is a member of the Picture This Hall of Fame. Congratulations. With his performances of Raging Bull and The Godfather Part 2, we have Robert De Niro joining our Picture This Hall of Fame. I believe both performances may be chosen by Dan. Maybe you picked Godfather. I'm not sure. But Robert De Niro is in the Picture This Hall of Fame. With 2 performances from Ghost and The Color Purple, Whoopi Goldberg will be joining our Picture This Hall of Fame. Our newest inductee as of today, she was chosen by Chad for The Turning Point, and now she's also representing The Apartment. It is Shirley MacLaine is now in our Picture This Hall of Fame. And then moving forward with 3 wins, with 2 big blockbusters, Star Wars and Raiders of the Lost Ark, and now also Witness with 3 awards. It is Harrison Ford joins the Picture This Hall of Fame. We have someone with 3 awards from Dog Day Afternoon, The Godfather, and The Godfather Part 2. Al Pacino will also be joining the Picture This Hall of Fame. And then someone came in this year and racked up 4 wins and will be joining Tom Hanks with the most awards in our Picture This Hall of Fame, with 4 awards in the Picture This Hall of Fame for movies such as Annie Hall, The Godfather Part 2, and Reds.
Yeah.
It is Diane Keaton who holds the record right now for Picture This alongside Tom Hanks for 4 wins joining our Hall of Fame. So now we have 14 inductees, 7 for this year, 7 from last year. That is our Picture This Hall of Fame. So thank you to those actors for giving great performances, because we picked them and they're great performances. Any last thoughts on this year before we head into next, Chad?
Oh my God. I mean, if we're just going to talk about the year, I probably could say a lot. But I mean, I like this month of movies. I thought they were very interesting, like different quality. Some of them were like Christmas movies. So like we did a really good job at picking the great slate for December. Wrapping up the year, probably a lot of changes coming. I already talked about some, trying to go see more movies. I don't know, maybe trying to be just a better dad, just like always. Trying to, reach that Jack Pearson level of daddery. I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot we could talk about the year if we're just going to have a big discussion about that. But I'm excited for 2024. We're going to do a lot more like classics, and might not just mean classics like 1960 and earlier, but like maybe like modern classics, stuff like that. So I'm excited for that, what's to come for Picture This, and
Chad teased our big tease, which is the year of classics here on Picture This. Will be coming to you next year. 10 months of classics, and then of course we will do 2023 for the 2023 Oscars, and we'll do 2014 for the retrospective. So those 2 years will be not classics, but we have 10 months of other classics to do, ranging from 1927 to 1982. So that's going to be our benchmark of classics. So the modern classics will go all the way up to the early 80s. But we're going to go with some really early classics as well. We're going to cover a lot of classics next year, just as a way of checking some boxes off, because, we run out of months to correlate themes to. Like, there aren't as many Color Purples where there's remakes all coming out. So we have to kind of pivot and think of a universal theme being the year of classics. So that'll be coming next year, starting in January with a very exciting one, which is the very first Oscars. We're doing it 1927 and 28. those movies, it's interesting because their best picture was split up into two. It wasn't best picture, it was best outstanding picture, and then best unique and artistic picture. So there really is not even a comedy drama separation. It's just one is, some of them are more for artistry, some of them are just outstanding. I don't know. So we're just going to cover all six because there's three in each category. So it's going to be six films, which we've never really done a six film slate. But three for outstanding picture, three for unique and artistic picture. We might pick a winner from each and then decide on like the overall winner. I'm not sure. But the films nominated for Outstanding Picture are Seventh Heaven, The Racket, and Wings. And then the Best Unique and Artistic Picture, the nominees are Chang, The Crowd, and Sunrise. So those are the films we'll be talking about. I don't know much about any of them. I mean, I know some
Same.
about some just based on history, but like I've never seen any of them, so I'm very excited. I'm a little apprehensive, but still like excited about it. We're gonna do it. We're gonna conquer the demon, the devil. Not the devil. I don't know what I'm saying. The dragon. That's what I meant to say. Conquer the dragon. The big one that is the first one. Chad, any thoughts before we head into there, and any last little holiday wishes? Where can they find you? All that jazz.
Yeah, I mean, it's very exciting. It's one of those things where it's like, when we started the show, maybe people might have expected us to start with this year, but no, we skip around and jump
Can't
around
get
a
a
little
following
bit.
by being like, "Yo, Wings, check it out." So
But right. But some people have started their shows that way. Yeah, and I'm excited to do this one. I forgot that we were doing like six of them. I thought it might have just been three, but I'm excited to see all of them if they're all available. I'm hoping that some of them are on YouTube.
if
A
not, we'll
lot of
just do
the
the three. But if the other three,
yeah.
because the first three are available, but if the other three aren't, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out, and I'm excited to check them out. It's always interesting to see something like that old and like
Mhm.
to compare it to movies that come out today and things like that. So yeah, excited to watch those and talk about it next month. And excited to start 2024. Yeah, I do want to wish Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays to everyone. Whatever you celebrate, I hope you have a great, safe holiday. You can catch me here. You can catch me on my channel, Chadwick Webb, where I rank things mostly, but I also do, reactions. I do reviews sometimes. Trying to like do other different things here or there. Check out the Nerd Entertainment Network. I do a show with my wife and my friend Hunter called Welcome to Primetime. We talk horror movies. We rank Buffy, the Vampire Slayer episodes and seasons, and we just talk about a lot of horror. We do brackets, trying to figure out with the brackets, like we do it each decade, trying to figure out what's the best horror film ever made. That's quite a task. Just check out my letterbox and check out everything else on the Dill Pickle Movie Network because it's a lot of great stuff over there.
Yay.
Yeah.
And thank you, Chad, as always, for just being a great co-host. I know we disagree
Thank you.
sometimes. Like this week, we definitely disagreed on a bunch, but I
Yeah.
think that'll make some fun discussions. And I love just all our DMs talking about these movies and other movies. It's just a great source of just funneling great thoughts and conversation. So I can't wait to keep it up in the new year. And
Same.
this is a big year for you, obviously. You became a dad and you've been a great dad. So I know your resolution is to be a better
Thank you.
dad, but you've already set the bar very high, my friend. And I'm proud to call you a friend.
Aw,
So thank you so
thank
much for
you.
everything you do for us. And thank you all for watching and for being a great audience. We've gotten record high numbers this year, and we're going to keep it going next year. Keep it going. Share to your friends. Podcast. I'm going to be better about dropping the podcast when the YouTube drops as well, right simultaneously, so that way you can listen to it right on the go instead of waiting a week or two. And yeah, just get involved. Get on if you want our Discord, DM me. We'll get you on our Discord to just talk about Picture This or talk about other shows. We really want to make it as much of a communal effort as possible. Go to the Facebook page. We talk a lot there, where we schedule guests for draft day, all those things. So please just check out everything there is to check out. But thank you as always for being great listeners and followers and viewers. All the controversial comments aside, just kidding. We love yours too. But thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next month with the very first of our year of classics, 1927. It's going to be a silent episode. We're just going to mouth everything. Just kidding. We're not going to do that. Maybe we will.